I was just going to ask how we usually work.
I just assumed you were going to tell me I always look like a moron. And we are live. Welcome to MLB Deeper Dive, a show that I do not host all that frequently. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by Jock Market. We'll touch on them in a little bit. But first, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, you and I haven't done a show in a while, man. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah, I was looking at the schedule. I was like, man, I do not remember the last time I did a show with Josh. So nice change of pace. Nice to be back on the show with you. How have things been?
Yeah, I can't, no complaints. Heavy NBA stuff. We can't all just go to Montana in the middle of everything and hang out. Although I would like to, and I'm doing a sort of similar thing for my actual vacation, getting out into the mountains, no cell phone service, getting away from it all. Great. I seriously cannot wait.
I had no idea how bad I needed it until I was there. And we were just doing enough stuff outside too, where when I did have service, I wasn't on my phone anyway. It was just so nice to not be allowed to play DFS, even if I wanted to, not care at all about anything going on. I didn't really realize till after I was out there how nice that was going to be.
Yeah. I need that mental refresh because we've been going pretty much nonstop aggressively since we got sports back after COVID. And, that's a pretty long run. I didn't get away. It was nice to have sports to cover and it's fun to do it, but boy, am I excited to just not do anything for 9 straight days. So it'll be fun. 143 viewers, 28 likes. I'm not going to be okay with that ratio. Keep bumping that number up. We've got 9 games to go through. Technically speaking, we've got 8.5. I've got 2 deadheads that I think are coming out of the ground 2 minutes ago. So I'm going to scope that out while Adam talks about whatever's going on. But we are kicking it off, if you're ready, with your Orioles.
Yeah, I'm ready. Was that deleted? Am I supposed to start talking? Or
No. We're fine. Orioles projected 4.7 runs. Blue Jays 6.3. Not looking great for Baltimore today. Matt Harvey going for Baltimore. Ryu going for the Jays. How are you feeling about this one from a pitching perspective? Ryu picking up 19% ownership on DraftKings right now at 8,300. Not nearly as much on FanDuel, just 4% at 8,800. Harvey doesn't appear to be picking up much of anything. How are you feeling about Ryu today?
Not great. I think he's reasonable if the ownership's going to be relatively low. 19% on the 2-pitcher site on DraftKings is okay. There's not a ton of great pitching that you're going to feel good about tonight. And I think the pitchers that you do feel the best about are going to get quite a bit of ownership. But Ryu's just not a great strikeout pitcher. I don't think the Orioles are quite as bad in offense as maybe people assume based on how bad they are as a baseball team. Ryu comes into the game with a 22.8% strikeout percentage, does only walk 4% of hitters, which is nice. Actually, I was reading off the wrong page. 5.5% walk percentage, 19.4% strikeout percentage. Point still stands though. Not walking a lot of guys doesn't strike out a ton of guys, and you're most likely going to be getting a right-handed heavy Baltimore lineup. So far this year against right-handed bats, Ryu with a 18.2% strikeout percentage, 177 expected ISO. I think he's okay, but again, I just kind of Cedric Mullins, lefty, but just a very good hitter. He's been one of the best players in the American League this year. Hayes, Mancini, Mountcastle, Santander all can do damage from the right side. The bottom of the order is garbage, but it's just I hate rostering guys in DFS that are getting some ownership and that you're banking on them going 6 or 7 innings because it's very unlikely that they pile up strikeout totals. So much can just go wrong for them. So if you're playing 150 lineups, I think Ryu is fine. I assume that I'm getting some. But it's just not a price point that's really jumping out to me as favorable.
When I ran my sim, he showed up 10% of the time in the optimal. That felt about right. Seemed a little over-owned to me when I first looked at it, and that sort of jived with exactly where I was. Here's the bigger question, because I think this is the one that matters most. What are you doing with these Blue Jays bats? Projected for 1.3 more runs than any other team. They are the top team on the top stack tool by more than double. What do we do here?
I think it's really, really difficult to answer that because, like you said, they're more than double the top sack percentage. They were in a great matchup against Harvey. Their projected ownership on one hand they're not really projected to be over-owned. We have them projected for 23.5% aggregate ownership, 23% top stack percentage. The problem is as your tournaments get bigger and more top heavy, raw ownership also matters. You can say that a team isn't projected to be over-owned, but if you're playing a 50,000 person tournament and 10,000 of those lineups are going to have Blue Jays, you still, even if the Blue Jays do end up being the top scoring team, you're just still like playing a lottery where you have to have the best Blue Jays team. So it does get to a point where especially in those larger field tournaments, where I think you kind of just have to start factoring in raw ownership as well. I think obviously the Blue Jays are in a great spot, the best spot on the slate. Matt Harvey is terrible. The Blue Jays have tons of power top to bottom in this lineup, really 1 through 9. Even Danny Jansen at catcher has some power for a catcher, especially a $2,400 catcher. The other problem that you run into with this team is that they're not, sometimes when you see a team with a lot of aggregate ownership, it's like 3 hitters on the team project as really good value, so they're getting a lot of ownership, and then the rest aren't getting it. That isn't likely to be the case here with the Blue Jays. I think you're going to get ownership going to just about every player on this team. We haven't gotten an ownership update recently, but in the last one, the only hitter on the team projected for less than 10% ownership was Lourdes Gurriel at 9.4% on DraftKings. Everyone else, 16+%, including Danny Jansen. So there's not even like a sneaky way to go to the Blue Jays, I don't think. So I think I lean towards the more in your smaller field stuff where, even if, but let's even say that they're more popular in small field, but 30% of a 200-person tournament, you're still only having to contend with, not that many lineups if the Blue Jays go off, compared to 20% in a 50,000-person tournament. You're competing with 10,000 other lineups. So I'd be more inclined to go to them in small field stuff, maybe pump the brakes a little bit in larger field stuff. The other thing you can do, though, is, in those larger field tournaments, if you stack a lower owned team, you can still mix in, 1 or 2 of these Blue Jays bats, just trying to get a home run off of Harvey. You're basically hoping that as a whole, the Blue Jays underwhelm and the people that full stack Toronto kind of strike out a little bit, but that you just hit on the 1 or 2 guys that do well. That'll put you in a good situation. Still gives you exposure to the Blue Jays. But I do think when you see situations like this, it does become very dependent what type of contest you're playing.
Coming out of my Sims, Gurriel was the only guy in non-double digits at 8%. The average optimal for me for the Blue Jays is 16%. For every other team, it's 8% or below. So it is just absolutely bonkers, going crazy for the Blue Jays. Are there any Blue Jays that you're just simply not as interested in? Or is it just 1 through 9? It doesn't really matter to you.
Yeah, 1 through 9, it doesn't matter because you get, there's something positive to be said for all of them. Of course, I'm not as interested in Lourdes Gurriel as I am in Vladimir Guerrero, but he's also $2,000 less expensive and he's lower owned. Danny Jansen, 2,400 batting ninth. Of course, I'm not as interested in him, but he also has it going for him that he's basically minimum salary. So 1 through 9, I think there's no one guy in this lineup that you're just like, oh yeah, that's a slap hitter that you're hoping to get 10 points. All of these guys have enough power to do damage against Matt Harvey.
Now, on the opposite side, how do we handle Baltimore, who is very clearly a solid play from a value perspective? They are an insane ranking on our top value metric, clearly the top, and yet quite a bit over-owned, twice as much ownership as their odds of being the top stack, which isn't totally crazy. Seems like an optimizer stack to me. What are you doing with your Orioles?
I think I'm more inclined to just grab 1 or 2 of them for a couple of reasons. For one, on DraftKings, and this is something we talked about before, but not you and I, but whenever the Orioles play. On DraftKings, Trey Mancini and Ryan Mountcastle are the same position. So you can't even full stack the Orioles with their best hitters. You have to choose one of them. So that knocks down how much you're going to like those stacks. And then also, like you said, you're getting a lot of ownership or probably more ownership than it deserves going to the Orioles in terms of top stack percentage, in terms of allocating your half of your lineup to the Orioles. But you still have individual hitters here against left-handed pitching since 2019. 282 expected ISO for Mancini, 221 for Hayes, 172 for Mountcastle, Santander at 187. Even Cedric Mullins, you can't read too much into what he's done in the past because he just appears to be a completely different player this year. Lefty's not great, but he is leading off. He is only 3,500. So I think kind of using the Orioles as ways to fill in your lineup maybe makes a little bit more sense to me than allocating half of your lineup to this team.
Yeah, I had them as my number 6 overall stack, but if they're pulling in double ownership at most of these spots, I think we'll be able to find some value elsewhere. Is there anything else you want to touch on in this spot, Orioles or Blue Jays?
No.
Easy enough. Oh, God. I couldn't remember. So, in the NBA, when I changed the stuff on the sheet that I'm looking at, I have it as just the acronym for the team. So I started typing in FLA for Florida, And then I shook my head. I was like, well, they're not Florida anymore. So then I typed in MIA. And I was like, oh, it's the nickname for baseball. So it had to be Marlins anyway, which is nobody cares. Marlins and Dodgers. Marlins at home, Dodgers on the road. Dodgers 5 implied runs. Marlins just 4. 60% chance to win for the Dodgers. I've got it as Jordan Holloway versus David Price. Are you seeing anything different?
We have Ross Detweiler and Jake Reed opening. I don't know what's coming in after them.
Okay, so bigger question. Do you care at all about the pitching in this game?
I do not.
Okay, that's going to be easier then because I didn't know what to really do there. That is truly the worst part of baseball now.
After weather.
Well, we've always had weather.
Well,
but
yeah,
like the opener, I don't know who's starting after that. How many innings do they go? They can't get the win unless it breaks correctly. Like that as a DFS mechanism is the worst part of baseball.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty bad. And but yeah, I mean, looking at those guys, like David Price threw 42 pitches on July 4th. So it's pretty unlikely that on July 4th. So it's pretty unlikely he's going 6 innings as the long guy today. Jordan Holloway is facing the Dodgers, so I don't really care at all there. He's on regular rest, but you're probably, even if he pitches well, you're probably getting 60 to 70 pitches. But again, tough matchup against the Dodgers. So not interested in pitching here. I don't think we have to worry about it too much.
Okay, perfect. On the opposite end of that coin, bats. I have the Dodgers as my number 2 stack. I do not have the Marlins as a stack that I'm particularly interested in. Are you going to the Dodgers?
Yeah, I think the Dodgers look pretty good. Like I never like targeting bullpen games, but Jordan Holloway he hasn't been bad, but I don't think he's anything special either. And we just know how much talent is in the Dodgers lineup. Right now, we have them with the 3rd highest top stack percentage, getting at about 8%, only getting about 4.4% ownership. I think maybe they'll be a kind of difficult team to get to today because they mostly are expensive. On DraftKings, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Chris Taylor, all over 5K. Albert Pujols gives you some value, but he's also Albert Pujols. So I think they'll be kind of hard to get to when you consider there's not really value pitching that anyone's going to feel good about. But if you can get to them in tournaments, I think that they are very likely to be one of the top scoring stacks tonight.
Yeah, one of the better leverage scores on the top stack tool on DraftKings for today. 2nd, in fact, behind the Yankees, who we will obviously get to in a little bit. If you're looking for any individual bats from the Marlins, does anybody stand out? I don't assume that you're stacking the Marlins today.
Yeah, I don't anticipate stacking the Marlins. Nobody really stands out either. I mean, like Garrett Cooper has power at 3,500, but I think there's enough underpriced hitters on this slate that he's not going to be a priority. It's not like he's going to get a great matchup anywhere. So yeah, I don't really see a whole lot with Miami.
Yeah, I had Cooper coming out of the sim with the highest odds of being in the optimal for the Marlins, and that's still only 5%. So pretty difficult to get excited about that one. When you come in as the 12th best team out of 18, probably not going to be showing up in a ton of my lineups. I don't have anything else I want to touch on here. Their top stack odds are 3rd from the bottom. So if you're good on this game, I am also good on this game.
Yeah, not one of the more interesting games, I don't think.
Now, I mean, I do like the Dodgers, but I'm not telling anybody anything they don't already know. For you should roster Mookie Betts, you should roster Max Muncy or Justin Turner. Like everybody knows
exactly. And I really don't even know on this slate how actionable it's going to be. Like they're one of the lowest value offenses. I would love to get to the Dodgers if I can. I think there's a pretty good chance once I start making lineups and then looking at them, it's like, wow, these lineups are pretty bad, around the Dodgers. So I could see where even as much as I would like to get to them, maybe they're not even a team I get to that much just because of the pricing.
Oh man, I should look at this quick. I don't know. Can I filter that quickly? I wanted to take a look to see every time I have the Dodgers as my top stack, what's the pitching combination?
Yeah.
Luis Garcia, Zach Wheeler, Paddock, Anderson, Mania Garcia. I don't know.
So it's actually easy to get to them?
Per this, at least. We'll see how accurate I am. Erman, Wheeler plus a lot at the very least. Seems like it's possible.
Maybe are they weaker Dodger stacks? Like they're not using the best players?
That I don't have quickly to pull up for you.
Yeah, because I'm trying to just kind of quickly plug something in on DraftKings. Like if you go with
I have them only behind the Blue Jays, which is obviously a bit of a gap.
What'd you say?
I have them only behind the Blue Jays, so obviously a bit of a gap.
Yeah. If you go, I mean, I guess it's doable because there's just going to be cheap bats. But like, for example, if you go 1 through 6 and skip Chris Taylor, so you're using Albert Pujols for value there, but you're getting Muncy, Turner, Betts, Bellinger, and then you plug in Wheeler, Wood, you have $2,500 left for 3 positions. But those positions include catcher, shortstop, outfield. So, like, for example, you could go either Pedro Severino or Danny Jansen from that Toronto game. They're less than 2,500. You could go like Alcides Escobar if he leads off. He's a second baseman now, so that's a bad example. You can probably find a cheap shortstop somewhere, and you can definitely find a cheap outfielder. So you can make it work, but it's not going to be pretty one-offs around it.
Fair enough. We'll keep it moving. Game number 3 of 9 today. And this one only counts a little bit because no Mets, no Brewers on this FanDuel slate, just an 8-gamer. Mets 3.7 implied runs, Brewers 3.3. We have Brett Anderson on the hill for the Brewers from what I'm seeing, and unannounced for the Mets. But from what I also saw, it's Robert Stock. Have you seen anything different?
I have not.
Okay, perfect. Stock 4,700 on DK. Brett Anderson 6,200. Doesn't appear that either guy is pulling any ownership. Are they interesting to you as pitching prospects for today?
Actually, trying to pull up Robert Stock pretty quick to see what he's done lately, because the last time and the only time he's pitched in the majors this year was June 16th. He threw 79 pitches. This is someone that was used as a reliever previously. So trying to see if he's like stretched out and could potentially give them innings here. I
gave him 4 innings, and that kind of works at 4,700.
Yeah, I mean, he was with the Cubs. He made 2 starts at AAA for the Cubs. He made that 1 start in the majors that I was referring to. So I'm trying to pull up his minor league numbers to see when the last time he pitched was in the minors, because that can give us a good idea of like how deep he's going to go. But the main point I'm getting at here is we shouldn't expect him to go deep into this game. But like you were saying, if he goes 3 or 4 innings at 4,700 against the Brewers on a slate where the value pitching options are guys like Antonio Senzatella and Oviedo from the Cardinals, getting a $2,000 discount on a guy that can go 3 or 4 innings if you're trying to get, those expensive stacks, I think is viable in especially those large field tournaments. In the minors, his most recent appearance was June 26th. He went 6 innings.
Okay. I mean, that works. He shows up pretty highly in my Sims, which leads me to believe that he's part of the linchpin of getting to that Dodger stack.
Right.
Obviously, locking him in makes that shit a lot easier.
Yeah, we don't have him in our projections right now, so that's something that we'll need to change by lock.
Yeah, he's not showing up all that much in my top Dodger stacks. It's a lot more Wheeler, which is pretty surprising to me.
But yeah, I think
it's not surprising that it's Wheeler, but
I'm actually interested in Stock here.
Okay.
Just the fact that we got the 6 innings at AAA, the fact he threw a good amount of pitches in his 1 major league start this year. Of course, it is a different team now, so maybe the Mets are just going to use him differently. But I assume that they plan on trying to get a few innings out of him here on this, in the second game of the doubleheader. And the Brewers' offense isn't very good. Stock has had, it's hard to read into too much because he's been a reliever for most of his career, so his strikeout numbers are inflated. But again, when you're just talking like this slate, it gives you access to a different build in tournaments is the big thing to me. And he's extremely cheap. So I do have some interest in Stock. I'm not saying I think Stock scores, the most raw points or anything like that. But yeah, I think that if you can get like 10 to 12 points from Robert Stock, there's a decent chance that's enough in tournaments.
Are you going to any bats here? Because I think the answer is probably no, given the total for this game.
No, I mean, you're only getting 7 innings. And, Brett Anderson's not a pitcher that's very good, but a lot of the good hitters in the Mets lineup are left-handed. Again, you lose some ceiling too with the 7-inning game. So, if you want to mix in some Peter Alonso, I think it's fine as a one-off, but overall, I don't really see much.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have much to add here. They're like Lindor, I guess, if he's not going to pick up any ownership, but this is not really the spot to me. But I'm with you. I think Robert Stock is interesting as a second pitcher today. A $4,700 price tag, not too big of a problem. Justin Bruce with the super chat said, playing the $88, 36 entry max, 1,200 total entries on DraftKings. Should I play it more like a large field GPP or a single entry GPP? Never played this type of contest, so any advice is appreciated. All right. So those two things aren't the same thing, but I know where you're going with that because a single entry GPP is never going to have just a high entry field to begin with. It's just going to be hard. 1,200 entries. What are your thoughts here?
I play it like a regular tournament because I mean it's still pretty top heavy. Like you have 20K going to first, you have 1K going to sixth. You want to win the thing, but I do think if that was in the context of what we were talking about earlier, like with the Blue Jays, for example, if 20% of this field has Blue Jays stacks, you still are just trying to beat like 250-ish lineups. That's pretty doable. So like I think in that sense, like in the context of caring a little bit more about leverage than raw ownership, I think I lean towards leverage in that size tournament. Whereas if it were 48,000 people, I'd really start to care about raw ownership. But you still should be treating it like a tournament and trying to win, not like, throwing in a cash lineup or something like that.
Anything else you want to touch on for Mets Brewers?
No.
There we go. That's easy enough. 3 games up, 3 games down. We've got 6 more to go. Schedule for the rest of the day, 6 p.m. Eastern. Immediately after this, you do not want to leave this stream. MLB Live Before Lock. Eric and Greg breaking it all down, taking you all the way up to 7:05, and then transitioning immediately to PGA Live Before Lock. Eric's not going anywhere. Ben is coming in. They're talking a little golf. You guys should watch. This tournament, I'm not going to lie, is absolutely atrocious. Everybody worth a damn in golf is already across the pond, but maybe he'll talk a little bit of Scottish Open and you can get some legitimate guys, because I took some truly egregious names in our betting video today. And well, not today, yesterday. That is going to be a hell of a tournament. Literally anyone can win, which is kind of crazy. So keep your eyes peeled for the rest of our content coming out today. Plus free content. Everybody loves free stuff. If you don't have the money to get in behind the paywall right now, you can check out the free content that we offer every day. MLB Top Pitchers Tool, free today, which is pretty exciting. So our Top Pitchers Tool and our Top Stacks Tool, 2 tools I rely on more than just about anything on the website. When we first put these tools out, they were massive improvements to my overall ROI. In particular, that Top Stacks tool really changed the game for me 2 years ago. 3 years ago. Wow, time really moves. That COVID year just doesn't count any longer. Anyway, Top Pitchers Tool is free. PGA Rankings also free. So if you are playing golf, follow along for that PGA Live Before Lock show with our free PGA Rankings. And now we move it on to Cubs and Phillies. Cubs at home, 3.4 run implied total. Phillies 4 to 58% chance to win for the Phils. Alec Mills against Zach Wheeler. We got to start here with Zach Wheeler, the chalk play of the day.
Yeah, I don't have anything negative to say about him. I mean, he's projected for 55% ownership on DraftKings, which is a lot. And again, it kind of goes back into that Blue Jays conversation where if you're playing against 50,000 people, there is some merit to just looking elsewhere. But the one thing that I think, I've made the point several times now because we had DeGrom yesterday as well, I do differentiate a little bit with pitching versus hitting. Like I'm more willing to just play a popular pitcher because it's only taking up one of your roster spots. It's very, very easy to play a popular pitcher and still be different elsewhere. Whereas if you're 5-man stacking the Blue Jays, that's 50% of your roster spots on DraftKings. And it's, of course, limiting you what you can do elsewhere because you're allocating the same amount of money as all those other people. You have the same, correlated plays as all those other people. So I do think it's a little bit less important with pitching to just, stay away from everyone popular. Not to mention there's less volatility in pitching as well. So I'm still fine going to Zach Wheeler. I think that you can certainly make a case in larger field tournaments for being underweight, but I think Wheeler pretty clearly looks like the top option here. He's been excellent this season, comes in with a 31% strikeout percentage, 5.5% walk percentage, 2.74 xFIP. Matchup against the Cubs is fine in terms of strikeouts. Just, winds blowing in, not hot like it was the last couple of days. I don't really see anything negative to say about Wheeler here.
Now, he was unquestionably the top pitcher coming out of my sims, 39% likelihood of being in the optimal. Next closest guy is in the 20s. So he's not even in the same ballpark. He's basically the Blue Jays version of pitching today. You kind of mentioned it at the top. I couldn't agree more. 44% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on this slate, pulling 50% ownership. I don't really have anything else to add. Next question would be, are you getting to Alec Mills at all?
I'm actually kind of interested in Mills because he threw 92 pitches last game. And he's someone that hadn't really been stretched out this year. and he's decent. Like, he's not a high strikeout guy. He's got a very good very good ground ball percentage, around 62%. But for the season, he just really wasn't going too deep in the games. But in his last three outings, he's gone 77 pitches, 69 pitches, and then in his last one against Cincinnati, he went 5 2/3 through 92 pitches. I don't know if that's a sign of things to come or not. Could just be a blip on the radar, and he still gets pulled at like 80 pitches tonight. But mildly interested if he is going to be fully stretched out, because he does a good job of keeping the ball on the ground. We don't have a lot of good cheap options on this slate. We've already talked about hoping to get 3 innings out of Robert Stock, because that's the state of the cheap pitching options on this slate. And with Alec Mills right now, you're only getting about 2% ownership on DraftKings, with about a 10% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, according to Alex's Sims. So, again, he's not someone I'd be getting to in my first lineup. I'm definitely not looking at him in cash or anything like that. But I do think that there's a path to success for him, and maybe people just aren't going to pay attention to the fact that he threw 92 pitches last game.
Top of the Phillies order, picking up a little bit of love. Segura, Realmuto, Harper, all double digits or higher in ownership. Realmuto, in fact, at 26%, which a little bit different for a catcher. How are you feeling about the Phillies as a stack? Because I don't totally believe in them the same way that ownership looks. And I'm certainly not interested in the Cubs as of right now, or unless you're going to go a different direction.
Yeah, I'm not that interested in the Phillies either. I will say that Bryce Harper being 4,600 on DraftKings looks like a really good price. So does Realmuto at 3,400. The Phillies in general are just really, really cheap here. But I think that's leading to the ownership that you mentioned. They look like they have a reasonable chance of being the top value tonight. They've got a bunch of guys that probably are just going to show up in terms of optimizers. Gene Segura also leading off at 3,400. And so I think maybe you just see a little bit of inflated ownership on those guys against the pitcher in Mills, who, again, he's not a great strikeout guy, but he's not terrible. 0.3 home runs per 9 allowed this year, 3.11 xFIP. He really hasn't given up much. So with ownership going to the Phillies in unfavorable hitting conditions against a pitcher that I think is decent, and also a pitcher who's not getting ownership, so it's not like you're leveraging against the field by playing the Phillies, that's a team that I think I'll probably end up being underweight on.
Third worst leverage on the top stacks tool today for the Phillies, and I agree with it completely. So not like I wouldn't want to get to some of these Phillies bats. They're obviously good, and the price tags are really the appealing part. I can't really prioritize it all that much. Do you have any interest in any individual bats from the Cubs?
Not really. I think Wheeler's such a good pitcher. And the thing is, not only does he strike guys out, he's striking out 34% of lefties, 28.5% of righties this year. You're getting a pretty balanced Cubs lineup, but he's done a very good job of limiting power as well. Only a 111 expected ISO to righties, 0.091 to lefties. So he's not one of these guys where, sometimes even when you talk about top tier pitchers, you can say, he gives up power to lefties. So, he'll probably make 1 or 2 mistakes in this game and you can take advantage. He just hasn't given anything up. So to me, if I'm looking for something to do with the Cubs, I'd be more inclined to full stack and just hope that you get like a bad Zach Wheeler start and, just bad top to bottom than go individual players. Because if Wheeler is on, he's just not someone that you're going to be very successful trying to pick off with one hitter.
No, not so much.
And that's Cubs. Also not me advocating for stacking the Cubs. That was just saying, like, if you're looking at this saying, like, I'm not playing Zach Wheeler, I insist on going against him, play 5 Cubs instead of 1.
They're 4th from the bottom in top stack at 1.6%. I have them dead last, but either way, that's where they should be. The bottom of this one. There's a reason Zach Wheeler's getting so much ownership. Anything else for Cubs Phils?
Nope.
On to game number 5, Astros hosting the Oakland A's. 4.6 run implied total for the Astros, 3.9 for the A's, a 58% chance to win for Houston. Luis Garcia, Sean Manaea. Garcia picking up a ton of ownership. I mean, not in comparison to Zach Wheeler, but 21% at 9,600, 6% owned on FanDuel at 9,700. I am not as enamored with Luis Garcia in this spot as the public ownership. How are you feeling about him?
Feel pretty good about him. I think he's good. I think that the pitching environment's pretty good. Only a 3.9 implied run total for Oakland. Garcia this year, the strikeout stuff's been solid. 24% against lefties, 30% against righties. We have the Oakland lineup. It's a pretty balanced lineup. 3 righties in the top 6, 5 righties overall. There's some strikeouts in there as well. I don't love the $9,600 price tag, but again, you just kind of don't have a lot of pitching you are going to love on the slate. So I am interested in Garcia. I do like that, even though he's getting quite a bit of ownership at 21%, that is less than Alex Wood's getting for $1,100 less. It's less than Chris Paddock's getting for $900 less. And he does have the second highest top 2 pitcher percentage on the slate. So I am interested in Garcia here. I do think it's a good enough spot.
Fair enough. I don't know. I had him show up 15%, so it's not too crazy for me, but it just felt like a little bit too high. Nothing too crazy. Getting any one of these teams from a hitting perspective, I feel like the A's have slightly better individual bats just for relative to their salary. But are you getting to the Astros or the A's as a stack?
I kind of like the Astros in larger field stuff. They're middle of the pack in terms of top stack percentage at 5%, but only projected for about 2% ownership. And they're another one of these offenses that just have very, very good hitters throughout, especially 1 through 6 from Altuve through Tucker. It does kind of suck that you have 3 lefties in there with Brantley, Alvarez, Tucker all being good hitters on the Astros. And Minaya has struck out 34.5% of lefties this year, but he has also allowed some power to them, more power actually than he has to righties. So I think it's a spot where, it's just one of these teams where whenever the Astros are 2 or 3% owned, I'm interested because they're just so good. And if Minaya is not at the top of his game, they'll be able to take advantage, but not a team that I would expect to be just jamming in everywhere because they're not one of the highest teams in terms of top stack percentage. They have, a decent leverage score, but it's nothing special. And Minaya himself isn't getting a lot of ownership. So those are kind of the 3 boxes.
It's me, isn't it?
What?
Y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? You're frozen on my screen also. Okay, so anyway, kind of the 3 boxes for me that like really push a team towards the top in tournaments are a really high top stack percentage, a really, really high leverage score, or, some combination of those and facing a popular pitcher. You're not getting any of those with the Astros. So more of like a middle of the road stack, but I do think they look like they're going to be underowned here. So even though I think Minaya is a good pitcher, I do have interest in those larger field tournaments.
I think I'm back.
I can hear you.
Perfect. So I had nothing on my screen. Darkness for Tyler, darkness for you, nothing. And then I tried to unmute the YouTube video, but you were still hearing me. And then I was hearing me twice. And I thought me was it's not important. Anyway, it appears we're back. I didn't listen to anything you said about the rest of the Astros and the A's, but just based on what I see, probably wasn't all that interesting either.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It'll be why you lose all your money tonight.
There are going to be plenty of reasons for me to lose all of my money, and that one won't be the only one, I promise. Okay, fair enough. Anything else here?
I guess I'll mention Minaya too, kind of for the same reason I mentioned the Astros, just that he's very good and he's getting like no ownership. I think he's overpriced. I think the matchup sucks. I don't want a lot of Minaya, but if you're someone, especially, and I plan on playing Zach Wheeler. If you're someone who looks at 55% on Zach Wheeler and just says, I'm not doing that, you should be rostering some Sean Minaya because he's at least one of the pitchers on the slate who has the talent to, keep up with Wheeler.
Absolutely.
I personally would rather just roster Wheeler.
Yeah, I would. I have Wheeler 1 to 13. It feels weird to say it like this, but 13 times more likely to be in the optimal lineup. I have him at 39%, Minaya at 3%.
Yeah.
Feels weird, but I mean, that's what happens when you have Zach Wheeler projected for 7 more fantasy points. A lot. To the Diamondbacks we go. Diamondbacks hosting the Rockies. And this one's a coin flip. Humberto Castellanos going for the Diamondbacks, Antonio Senzatella going for the Rockies. And I'm not going to lie, Humberto Castellanos rolling off my tongue pretty easily as a name that you don't normally see in basketball circles. Been playing a lot of basketball lately. Pretty happy that I spit that one out without stuttering it. No ownership really coming in for Senzatella or Castellanos. Senzatella at 3%. Are you grabbing any pitching here?
I don't think so, especially now that we've gotten Robert Stock. This morning, Greg kind of made a case for Senzatella that I thought was reasonable. It was kind of similar to our Robert Stock case where he was just saying, like, there's no cheap pitching on the slate. Senzatella is one of the cheapest options, viable options. He's got an okay matchup against the Diamondbacks. He's not a good strikeout pitcher. He's not a very good real life pitcher, but he's probably better than his numbers suggest because normally he's pitching in cores. But to me, I would just rather save $2,000 and go to Robert Stock if I'm using a pitcher just, hoping to get 10 to 12 fantasy points. I'd rather go the cheapest way that I possibly can. So I'm not really interested in Senzatella. I'm certainly not interested in Castellanos, who appears to be a reliever essentially and is unlikely to go deep at all into this game.
Yeah, I mean, I have stock with a higher projection than Senzatella, and he's coming in at $1,900 cheaper. So it's going to be a tough justification at that point. Hitting, on the other hand, we do got to talk about it a little bit. Let's start on the Diamondback side, where 6 guys projected for, I don't know, call it 15% or more ownership. How are you handling the Diamondbacks? I've got them as my number 4 stack as of right now. They are 6th in our top stack tool, showing up incredibly overowned.
Yeah, getting tons of ownership here because this is a team with a 4.8 implied run total against a pitcher in Senzatella who's not very good. And the only hitter in this lineup that is above 30. Okay, there's 2 hitters above $3,300 on DraftKings. Eduardo Escobar hitting 3rd, Nick Ahmed hitting 7th. Other than that, Josh Rojas is the next most expensive guy at $3,300. So you have Rojas, Peralta, Walker, Cabrera, Evan Smith, all these guys $3,300 or less. It's going to be so easy to get this team into lineups with Zach Wheeler plus Alex Wood, Wheeler plus Paddock, Wheeler plus Garcia, whatever you're trying to do. This is a team that'll fit in with those Dodgers stacks. They'll fit in with the Blue Jays stacks. You're just going to get a lot of ownership going to these guys. I think it's a good spot. The problem is just the Diamondbacks also aren't very good. And if you're going to get, 15% aggregate ownership, that's the spot where normally I'm going to end up a little bit underweight. But it's certainly a team where you can look for value, especially if you're using more contrarian pitching, if you're using a contrarian stack and need some filler. It's there for you. It's a good spot. It's just, again, kind of the larger the tournament gets, the less interested I'm going to be in the raw ownership going to some of these guys.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing it here in terms of the heavy ownership. Like, do I like Josh Rojas in the leadoff spot because of his price and his eligibility? Yeah, of course, but maybe not at 23% or Escobar at 20%, or even getting to someone like Pavin Smith at 14% ownership in the 6-hole. It's all price based, and that's what we're seeing in the top stack tool. They show up 6% chance of being the top stack, a 16% chance of being the top value, but they're pulling 13% of the ownership, second most of any team on the slate, just behind Toronto. So to me, you just have to find your value elsewhere. This isn't the type of team that I'm trying to chase.
Yeah, like I would rather, if I'm going to the inexpensive teams, I think I would rather you have Baltimore that's getting ownership, but a little bit less at least. That's a team that Baltimore now getting about 8.5%, Arizona 13. Baltimore gives you similar upside, similar chances of success. They actually have a higher value rating. So even though like Baltimore is projected to be overowned as well, not by nearly as much as the Diamondbacks are.
No, it's kind of bonkers. Do you like the Rockies? Because I feel like they're going a little underowned.
I think according to the top stack tool, they're going a little underowned. I also just still kind of think the top stack tool is drunk. Like the Rockies are bad. The Rockies are bad.
Yeah, I mean, like that's not an untrue statement. I have them as my 3rd best option today.
Yeah, I mean,
they're second on the top stack tool.
They're 3rd now if you refresh.
Okay.
But yeah, and to be clear, I make my lineups based off the top stack tool. I make my lineups based off data and not what I personally think. I personally think the Rockies suck, and I personally don't really like them. That being said, I'm not going to do anything to like stop them from getting into my lineups because data says that this is a good spot for them, I guess. But the Rockies are terrible. They're not in Coors Field. But on the other side, Castellanos isn't any good. You're getting a bullpen game for Arizona, which, again, I don't really like targeting, but, they're not facing a good pitcher at least. And this slate's really weird because there's not that many pitchers I love for DFS because I think that a lot of them have tough matchups. A lot of them are overpriced. There's also not a lot of pitchers I love taking hitters against. So that's the other thing here is like, I don't love the bullpen game aspect, but like, I don't really want to take, the Athletics against Garcia. I don't really want to take the Astros against Manaea that much. I don't, love the Cubs, the Phillies. Like, there's just not a lot of offenses I'm really in love with either. So I think that does kind of push the Rockies up too. And that's reflected in top stack tool as well.
All right. Yeah, it's not ideal. I feel like they have their batting order in reverse. Like Tapia and Hampson should not hit 1-2. They should hit 8-9.
McMahon probably shouldn't hit 6. CJ Cron probably shouldn't hit 7.
Yeah, there's also that. By the way, Robert Stock starting game 2 for the Mets.
Yeah, glad to get that confirmed. He's in our projections now too, and we do have him projected to be a good value.
Perfect. Favorite Rockies bet?
I mean, if we're excluding Price, Trevor Story, or Charlie Blackmon, because they're like the only two good hitters on the team. But
Okay.
Blackmon at 4,400 is probably the one that stands out the most batting cleanup.
Okay. That works for me. That's just, this one's gross. This one's really gross. I understand why it's happening, but the Diamondbacks pulling twice as much ownership as the Rockies is pretty wild to me.
The way that I view the Rockies right now is like, I understand why they have one of the top stack percentages on the slate. They have almost a 5 implied run total. The matchup is relatively good for the slate. It's just one of those spots where I look at it and I'm just like, if I end up building my lineups and getting to the Rockies and then the Rockies fail, I'm just going to feel so stupid because I just played the Rockies and thought they were going to do well.
That's really the worst. And there's no real like equivalent to this in the NBA. Like we've been trying to talk a little bit about what that transition is like going from basketball to baseball. And it's really hard to explain how playing a team like the Rockies today, based on the data, is still like a really good idea.
I think it's like when, maybe this is a little bit extreme, but it's like when PJ Tucker goes from playing 15 minutes to 36 minutes and is like minimum salary. You're like, yeah, he's in a position to do really well for the slate, but he's also not going to. Like, I think that's the most analogous is when you get like, you get someone stepping into a bigger role in basketball. Maybe a team rests several players, and so you're getting guys stepping up, and you're like, I know the opportunities are there, but I also know that these players are not any good at scoring fantasy points.
It's the low usage guy that doubles his minutes for a particular day.
Right.
So long as they aren't a center.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously like PJ Tucker's a center. Nobody gives a shit about my thoughts on PJ Tucker. Like he's a center, but he's not. I like that comp. That's good. Yeah. Cause there is no rostering the Rockies in basketball. You just like, if they suck, they just suck and you don't play them. It's wild stuff. Anything else for Diamondbacks and Rockies?
I guess one final thought is that whole, I might end up playing the Rockies just because the numbers say to thing is also predicated on them getting like 6% ownership right now. If that ownership projection comes up, I'm getting away from the Rockies extremely fast.
I really do not blame you one bit for that one. That is not the right button that I wanted to hit. What I do want to let you guys know is that today's show is sponsored by Jock Market. Jock Market is taken fantasy sports and turned it into a stock exchange, which is a really interesting mechanism, very different than what you see at your typical DFS sites. It allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for guaranteed payouts. NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA. You can make real money every hour, every minute, every second of any match that's going on. Use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold during the game based on your analysis. You can download the app to get started. Use the exclusive Awesemo promo code, which is Awesemo. Surprise, surprise. Get a $50 bonus on your first deposit. It's an exclusive offer only for everybody at Awesemo. So make sure you're taking advantage of it today. That's Awesemo for a $50 bonus at Jock Market. Got to download the app, baby. Only mobile. It's a great experience to just be sitting and buying and selling guys, just sitting on the couch during the game. Really, really fun. It's great for golf, great for baseball, great for basketball. I've had a great experience. I'm saying great a lot. Great, great, great. Go to Jock Market and check it out. And also, if you're looking to sign up at awesemo.com because you want tennis projections, yes, tennis projections, you can use the promo code TennisDFS and, you get a little something. Who doesn't want a little something out of tennis? Do you play tennis at all in DFS?
No, I haven't.
Well, you should. $1 for the first month of our awesemo.com Awesemo Plus tennis projections. $1. We're in the middle of Wimbledon. Well, we're nearing the end, but even still, $1 for the rest of Wimbledon. Hop in all of the DraftKings contests and the FanDuel contest for tennis. I don't know if FanDuel has tennis. They do, right? Yeah, they do. Of course they do. $1. That's all it takes. Tennis DFS. TENNIS DFS. One big word. 3 games to go. You ready to close this one out?
Yes, sir.
Giants and Cardinals. Giants 4.8 run implied total. Cardinals 3.7. 62% chance to win for the Giants. Wood, Oviedo. Who you got? I'm just kidding. It's obviously Alex Wood.
I was gonna say that's an easy one. Yeah, Alex Wood.
Yeah, Alex Wood projected for 32% ownership right now. I had him come in a little bit less optimally, but clearly one of the best arms on the slate. I actually have him third in terms of optimal odds, but he, Kikuchi, and Paddock are all basically packed together. Talk to me about how you feel about Wood here against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think it's a good spot. It's a good price point. It's not a pitcher I normally love getting to, but the slate, you have to take what the slate gives you. He's pitching at home in San Francisco, which is nice. 8,500 is a very reasonable price tag. You can expect 90 to 100 pitches, assuming all goes according to plan. Should give you 5 to 6 innings. He's struck out a higher percentage of right-handed hitters than lefties this year, which is good to see. 27.5% strikeout percentage, only a 142 expected ISO. You have the Cardinals projected lineup with nothing but right-handed hitters, so it's good to see he's been having some success there. Only a 3.7 implied run total for the Cardinals. I just think it's one of the better spots on the slate with Alex Wood.
Yeah, it's hard not to want to get there. I don't think you're looking at Oviedo, or are you?
No, I'm not. I would rather just play Robert Stock for 2K less.
Yeah, Oviedo did not come out well for me. Do we need to talk at all about Giants bats? We've got Dickerson and Wade coming in double digits in ownership. No one else really pulling all that much. To me, they just sort of look neutral. How do you feel? Obviously a tough place to hit in San Francisco.
Yeah, I actually like them here, though. They have almost a 5 implied run total in San Francisco. That is something that you don't see all that often. Oviedo hasn't been very good this year. 188 expected ISO to lefties, 11.2% strikeout percentage against lefties. And even though I'm not a total believer in this Giants offense being good long-term, since the start of the 2019 season, every single hitter in this projected lineup has a WRC plus of at least 101 against right-handed pitching. They have all been above average. Wade, Yastrzemski, Posey, who may or may not play, Dickerson, Crawford, Flores, Solano, Duggar, all have been above average against right-handed pitching. And they're not getting a ton of ownership. We have San Francisco coming in just behind Colorado in the top stack tool. They're getting about 4.7% aggregate ownership. I personally like the Giants a little bit more than the Rockies.
So I want to see, for them to be fourth on top stacks right now is a little surprising to me. I mean, once you get past Colorado, those next 6 or 7 teams are all basically the same, ignoring ownership. The difference between having a 5% chance of being the top stack and 5.6 is obviously not a lot, but right. It's 5 additional teams just in that exact same range. I had the Giants coming out 7th, but the Padres, the Orioles, and the Giants were all basically the same. The Phillies weren't all that far off either. So to me, they just exist. Wade, clearly the best option to me, but I don't really have a hot take for anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Yastrzemski's good and has a lot of power. He's expensive. Yeah. Alex Dickerson has power. He's only 2,800. I don't know. I like them because I don't think Oviedo's any good. I haven't had many spots on the slate that I like. I mean, we're talking about the Rockies as one of the top stacks. That's all you need to know about this slate. And an almost 5 implied run total in San Francisco is really, really high. That's a lot. They're tied with the Padres right now for the third highest implied run total behind the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. That's an abnormally high run total for the Giants.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You don't normally see that in San Francisco in this set of circumstances. I do have them slightly under-owned. It's mostly coming in the Posey, if he's not in, situation, maybe Yastrzemski a little bit because of that price, because you're paying a pretty healthy amount to get to Yaz and Posey. That's probably what's keeping people away. It's sort of a pay up to be contrarian option. I don't hate it. Yeah,
and I mean, Yastrzemski, he's expensive, but 673 plate appearances against right-handed pitching since the start of 2019, 266 ISO, 133 WRC plus. Lamont and Wade, 213 plate appearances, 217 ISO, 130 WRC plus. Alex Dickerson, $2,800 cleanup hitter, 491 plate appearances, 231 ISO, 122 WRC plus. Posey's got a 118 WRC plus. Yastrzemski, Wade, Dickerson are the guys that have really put up power numbers. But in terms of just being above average hitters, literally entire lineup has been above average against right-handed pitching since the start of 2019. So, I don't know. I really like, and Wade is cheap. Dickerson's cheap. They'll make it relatively easy to afford Yastrzemski. I don't know. I like the Giants here probably more than I ever really like the Giants, especially in San Francisco.
You're talking me into it a little bit. Anything else for Giants cards? Do you have any Cardinals? I won't say a word, I promise. Do you like any Cardinals bats against Alex Wood?
Not really. I mean, there's power here, but just not a spot that I'm really looking to get to that much. Wood has done a pretty decent job limiting power against righties this year. 136 actual ISO, 142 expected ISO to go along with the high strikeout percentage. I'm not going to talk anyone off of going to like Paul Goldschmidt or something like that, but I think there's other spots I'd rather target.
Sounds good. 2 to go. Mariners and Yankees. 4.2 run implied total for the Mariners, 4.3 for the Yankees. Basically a coin flip game. Yusei Kikuchi, Domingo Herman. They're both pulling basically the same amount of ownership, 16%, 17%. That's pretty much exactly where I had them coming out of my sims. Kikuchi at 21%, Herman at 18%. Do you have a preference between the two?
I prefer Herman just because he's cheaper, two, he's facing the Mariners. I don't feel very confident in him. He's been kind of an inconsistent pitcher throughout his career. The strikeout numbers haven't been great this year. He has only struck out 21.1% of hitters. 4.54 xFIP isn't anything to get too excited about either. And the Mariners are running a bunch of left-handed bats out there. They have five lefties, 4 righties. But at the top, you have 4 lefties in the top 6. So it's not a great spot. He's given up more power to righties than lefties, but a 176 expected ISO to lefties, 227 to righties. It's a spot he can definitely get hit around a little bit, but I just think he's pretty cheap, and the Mariners aren't a very good offense. I think I would still rather just save $3,000 and go to Robert Stock, but that's kind of just how I feel about like every pitcher below, I guess, Alex Wood in salary. Is I would rather just like completely punt the position. I really don't want to pay up for Yusei Kikuchi against the Yankees. I don't think.
Yeah, I just think that I don't know. I think they're just properly owned. Like if I showed up with that much ownership on either of those guys, I think that's fine. We've got Wheeler at 10-3, Minaya at 9-9, Garcia at 9-6, Kikuchi 9-3, Paddock, Wood, Ryu. I mean, like it's just ignoring Minaya at 9,900 just because of Wheeler. Like we just have this pack of guys at 15 to 20%. It all looks really similar to me. And I have them all projected very similarly too.
Yeah, we haven't added. Now we have. I'm trying to see quickly if it changed anything. So we have Robert Stock in the top pitcher tool now.
Okay.
Right now, we only have him getting 7% ownership. I don't know if that goes up between now and lock. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Kikuchi, 16% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 13.8% ownership. Like he's fine. The spot just really scares me because a lot of the Yankees bats, their strikeout percentages drop against left-handed pitching. Kikuchi has struck out 24% of righties this year, which is fine. He's allowed a 170 expected ISO, which is fine. But like Aaron Judge since 2019, 23.7% strikeout percentage. LeMahieu's at 11. Stanton's at almost 28. But Urshela 21.6. Torres 21.5. Sanchez and Voit still strike out. But I don't know. It's a really scary spot to me. So I guess I don't mind Kikuchi, but I would rather go to Garcia. I'd rather go to Wood. I'd rather go to Paddock, who we haven't talked about yet.
Obviously, a lot of individual bats look solid on the Yankees side just because they're Yankees bats. No one in this game as a hitter has projected ownership in double digits. Are you going to the Mariners? Are you going to the Yankees? Do you like one-off bats? This one's kind of wide open.
Yeah, I like both teams in larger field tournaments just because I think there's legitimate questions about Domingo Herman. And then on the other side, there's not really legitimate questions about Yusei Kikuchi. He's good, but the Yankees are the Yankees, and they just have so much power top to bottom. Right now, you have the Yankees with the 6th highest top stack percentage. But again, they're in that ballpark where there's just a bunch of teams lumped together. They're only getting about 2% aggregate ownership. They're a team that I've said several times recently against these good but not, ace level pitchers. I just think if you stack the Yankees in large field tournaments every time you can, you end up winning money. So I'm definitely interested in going there. And again, the Mariners, a lower top stack percentage at sub 4%, but only getting about 3% ownership, and they're cheaper. So they're a team that you could look to. Again, like the Mariners getting 3% ownership for all of their 4K and below bats compared to the Diamondbacks getting 13%. Give me the Mariners in tournaments.
Totally with you there. I have both of these teams as not frequently the top stack, but double the frequency of their ownership. And I think that's where it gets really interesting in the large field stuff, where you're not going to be competing with a lot of other people. Anything else here before we get to the final game?
No, I think that's about it from this one. Just, I guess, a lot of stuff that's interesting in tournaments because it's one of those games where like neither offense is getting much ownership, neither pitcher is getting a ton of ownership, and typically in baseball, one of those sides wins.
700 people, 116 likes. I'm going to ask one last time before we turn this over to the live before lock crew. Hit that thumbs up. Let's see if we can get that number north of 200 before we get out of here. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all of that good stuff. 4.8 run implied total for the Padres, 3.7 for the Nats. It's Chris Paddock. It's Patrick Corbin. Paddock pulling 28% ownership. Corbin just 6%. I like Corbin at 6% ownership. How are you feeling about the pitching here?
I'm terrified of Corbin. The guy.
Yeah, I should say, like, relatively speaking. Obviously, Padres offense scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, he's projected for 6% ownership, 9% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Maybe he can like rekindle what he used to be, but
yeah,
he has been just downright awful against right-handed bats this year. 16% strikeout percentage, 222 actual ISO, 228 expected ISO. The combination of giving up power and not striking guys out, and then now getting to face a lineup that most likely will have Tommy Pham, Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Will Myers, all from the right side. And the left-handed bats aren't slouches either, even though he has been better against lefties this year. I get it in large field tournaments. Like, pitching's pretty, SP2s are pretty dicey on this slate. I understand the argument going there. It's pretty similar to the one that I made with Domingo Germán, where I don't trust the guy at all, but the Padres obviously better than the Mariners, though. So I get it. I am hoping I don't get there. I doubt that I will. But I understand why someone would do it.
Yeah, I need Patrick Corbin to have some spider tack hidden up his ass or something because he's going to need a little bit of help. Is there anything you want to do differently with Chris Paddock, given his ownership?
Not really. I think that the Nats lineup is pretty watered down with no Schwarber. I think that makes a pretty big difference. We don't have the actual lineup yet, but there's a good chance that you're going to have Alcides Escobar at the top of it, which, I mean, that's a guy that in his prime, I don't know why he batted leadoff. I definitely don't know why he's batting leadoff like 8 years past his prime. And then once you get through that Turner, Soto, Bell, to some extent Castro part, like Yan Gomes will strike out. Gerardo Parra is another guy that his prime was like a decade ago and wasn't even that good then. Victor Robles gives you plenty of strikeouts. Then you get the pitcher spot. So Paddock is another one of these arms where he's a little bit more expensive than I would like. He's pretty inconsistent, but I think he's in a pretty good spot. I think he offers enough strikeout upside, 27.7% against righties, 21.8% against lefties. Probably going to be a pretty mixed lineup here in terms of righties and lefties. So I just think it's a good enough spot for Paddock, and I'll go there and hope for the best.
Yeah, I think he looks more than okay. 20% likelihood of being in the optimal lineup. That's good enough for me.
I feel a little bit better in terms of just like who I feel a little bit more confident in. Like I think I would lean towards Wood over Paddock if I'm just like have to choose one at that price point. But I think they're pretty comfortable.
I have Paddock at 20%. I have Wood at 21%. So yeah, I'm with you on pretty comparable. Padres bats, Nats bats, to me, both going slightly over-owned. A lot of that Padres over-ownership is just because Tatis is projected for 27% ownership, which, seems about right. He's incredible. But what are you doing with stacks for Pods and Nats?
Not too interested in the Nats. Like I think Paddock is one of the popular pitchers. You can certainly make a case for just the kind of leverage stacking against because he is pretty inconsistent. It certainly wouldn't be the first time that Chris Paddock's been in a good spot and just gotten absolutely lit up. And you do have a formidable, middle of the order with Turner, Soto, and Bell. So I can see making that case. But outside of that, I don't really see. I'm not too interested in Washington. On the Padres side, I am interested because, again, Corbin's really struggled. And then you mentioned, Tatis getting a lot of ownership is driving that aggregate ownership beyond him. 16% going to Pham, 12 to Machado, about 10 to Myers. So you're getting ownership there, but not nearly as much as, just Tatis individually is driving that up. So I do still like the Padres here. I think that they're in a pretty good spot against Corbin.
We got about 1 minute to go before we turn this one over to Eric and Greg for Live Before Lock. So let's sum it all up. Favorite pitchers and then favorite stacks for today.
Zach Wheeler, favorite pitcher, but Wheeler would probably Paddock. I'll say Wheeler would stock just because I don't like the SP2s, and I think I'll probably end up using Robert Stock a decent amount. But favorite stacks, Toronto, obviously. That's not surprising to anybody. I like the Dodgers, who appear to be going under-owned. I like the Giants, and in larger field tournaments, I like the Yankees.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Same thoughts I had kind of to close out the show this morning. I think this is a slate where there's pretty big question marks on a lot of pitching. There's pretty big question marks on a lot of stacks because there's not really a lot of gas can pitching going. There's just also not a lot of aces in good spots. So this is a slate where I personally like it a lot for tournaments because I expect that I'll look at my exposures and just not be very comfortable because it's going to be like, oh, well, I don't really like this, but there's just not that much that I really like that isn't getting tons of ownership. So I think that it's a slate where, just trusting the numbers and kind of trying to stay out of your own way goes a pretty long way.
There we go. Thank you guys for joining us for the deeper dive. Don't go anywhere. Live before lock, staying right here all the way up to 7:05. For Adam, I am Josh. Thank you very much for being here. Shout out to Jock Market for being the sponsor. We'll talk to you again later.
What is going on, everybody? I am Eric Lindquist, and this is the MLB Live Before Lock show presented by Jock Market. Very excited to be breaking down this slate here today alongside my dude. Done a ton of NBA shows with him, done a couple MLB shows, but I don't think we've done a Live Before Lock yet. Excited to get his takes right before we go live here at 4:05 on the West Coast, 7:05 on the East Coast with Lock. But Greg Ehrenberg, how are you doing today, my dude?
Good. Well, first of all, is it just me or your mic sounds a little bit funny? Is that Tyler?
Maybe?
Can you hear that too, or is he playing with his dog now?
Yeah, he just ran to go take the dog outside.
Okay. Well, anyway, your mic sounds a little bit. But other than that, yeah, I'm doing good. Third MLB show of the day. Already. Listen, I come in here. We've already got my guy Envious in here. He's already upset at me. He got very upset when I didn't like Marco Gonzalez's play the other day because he was a chalk play. I'm pretty sure that. He scored negative fantasy points that day, and I'm sure that he was upset that I didn't like him. So whatever, he's gone. He's not here anymore. Whatever, it happens.
This is the end. Yeah, no, Marco Gonzalez chalk day is always a thing you want to be on the other side of. I'm pretty sure. So I'm on your side of it. I don't even know what slate that was, but I 100% agree with you. Another thing that I think you'll agree with me on is that everybody needs to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Josh, the GOAT of getting the likes on the front end of the show. I'm just trying to get a couple of those spare ones that are still remaining on the back end. So hit that like button. Again, we're presented today by Jock Market. We've got a lot to get to. We'll talk about them a little bit later here in the program. But first, Greg Ehrenberg, what are your main points that you're looking at on this slate today? What are the key points? And also, is there anything that's kind of sticking out to you that you didn't expect in your exposures?
Not really. I'd say the thing that probably stands out the most to me is I'm surprised that our top stacks tool rates out the Rockies as pretty good stack. That's something that I disagree with quite a bit. I don't really think the Rockies are a good offensive play on most slates, especially when they're not a Coors Field. Other than that, though, I mean, it's hard to get away from Zach Wheeler. The pitching options are pretty weak for this slate. And, he's a popular starting pitcher, but I think for a good reason. I think that his floor and ceiling is far higher than anybody else on the slate. There is, a slight amount of rain risk in that game, but nothing to the point that's going to keep me away from rostering Zach Wheeler. There's also, favorable pitching conditions. The wind is blowing in. So, I mean, for me, I'm going pretty heavy on Zach Wheeler. I think that's a good place to start. But are you doing something similar, or are you trying to get away from him at all?
No, I almost lock buttoned him, which sounds weird to say. I very rarely ever do anything close to that in MLB. Try to mix it up because we are trying to find different exposures in order to fit different stacks. But I don't think his price tag is that prohibitive over on DK today. 10-3. I've got 70% of him. I think I'm going to stick kind of in that range right now. I'm mixing and matching a number of guys. It gets uncomfortable and very, very thin below him, but there's not a single thing. I mean, we talked a little bit on the other show previously. I don't want to say the sponsor name because, again, this is Chalk Market that we're talking about here. But we were talking on an earlier show about how much the Cubs strike out against right-handed pitching. The wind's blowing in here. It's a phenomenal pitcher in Zach Wheeler. I just think might be underpriced for the situation and the elements today. I don't really feel comfortable going to anybody. There's no direct pivot off of him in any direction. So I'm happy to be playing that chalk. I'm going to have a crazy amount of him. Glad that you're going to kind of be on board with that. If you are trying to get off of Zach Wheeler, is there another guy at SP1 you would even feel remotely comfortable with?
I mean, I'm not getting off of Zach Wheeler, so I can't say there is a guy. I mean, Zach Wheeler's in, let's see. So, I mean, he's in over 80% of my lineup, so I can't really advocate for saying there's a guy that I like rushing to get away from. There's other pitchers I'm mixing in, but he's in a price range all by himself on FanDuel and DraftKings today. So, if you look at our top pitchers tool, which is free today on DraftKings, we have Zach Wheeler projected for a 42.2% chance of being one of the top two pitchers on DraftKings. There's no other pitcher that's even over 20% other than Luis Gonzalez, and that's at 20.2%. Then you go over to FanDuel, he has a 16.9% chance of being the top scoring pitcher there at 11,200. There's no other pitchers above 10K. Generally on FanDuel, it's not all that difficult to pay up for pitching. So, I just kind of look at the outlook of the slate, and if Zach Wheeler pitches bad and that's what burns me, so be it. If he pitches poorly, I'm going to get my ass kicked today, but I don't mind it. I think that there's just no other place to really go to.
Nor should you mind it. He is above and away the best arm on this slate in a phenomenal hitting environment. That's the other thing that really sticks out to me about this slate. And we're getting way ahead of ourselves, and we'll talk about stacks much, much later. But there are no real good hitting environments on this slate outside of the Super Chalk, which is Toronto and Baltimore. 90 degrees, 55% humidity, wind blowing out to left. God, it is just a difficult spot to get away from in a lot of places there. We'll get to that, though, down a little bit later. Let's get to the SP2 conversation, or if you're trying to pay down on FanDuel, because, again, Zach Wheeler's 11-2 over on FanDuel today. That is a hefty price tag, but still 17.5% finishing up as the top pitcher there. Getting into this mid-range, is there somebody a little bit more expensive that you might be pairing with Wheeler quite a bit today?
I'm pretty spread out at SP2, if I'm being honest. I mean, Alex Wood is the one that I rostered the most heavily. Other than that, I have some exposure to Chris Paddock, although I'm underweight to the field. And, Yusei Kikuchi, I have some exposure to him, but once again, not a whole bunch. The thing is, I'm so heavy on Zach Wheeler, and it seems like it's the same for you as well, that once you have that much of your roster space taken up by one pitcher, if Zach Wheeler's in, 4 out of 5 lineups that I have, over 80%, then I just don't have that many other pitchers that I could get to and be overweight to. So, Alex Wood, I think, is the SP2 that I feel the most comfortable with. I'm going fairly chalky at pitcher. I'm differentiating at offense a little bit. But, it's really hard for me to look at any of these pitching options and really feel like, oh, this is the guy. If you go to our top pitchers pool, the one that stands out the most is Sean Manaea, just because he's only projected for 1% ownership. We have him with a 12% chance of being one of the top 2 scoring pitchers on the slate. So I don't mind getting overweight to Sean Manaea. But it's not like he's taking up a huge chunk of my lineups. I have him 5%, 5x the field, but that's still not a significant portion.
Yeah, I get that. And that's kind of the slate that we've been given. It's not the slate we deserve. It is really, really gross pickings there. Getting anywhere below Wheeler. Again, I'm very happy to be playing the chalk today. Back to my NBA roots, back to being the chalk donkey. Very happy to be doing so. I don't really see any kind of an issue with it on this slate specifically. I think I'll get different with some of my stacks, and I have plenty of different stacks that I'm interested in going to today. But getting down a little bit further, we got Domingo Ramon. We've got a number of guys like you say Kikuchi, 9,300, just a little bit too expensive. But getting down to this basement that we get blow down a little bit. Robert Stock was a guy that Adam was talking about a bunch on the deeper dive. I was kind of there a little bit earlier in the day. I don't even know if I necessarily have to do it. There's a number of stacks that I am playing that are cheaper, that aren't really gaining a bunch of exposure in the top stacks tool, be it San Francisco. I think that if Buster Posey's not going to be in that lineup, that's going to be a very easy team to kind of pair with some expensive pitching and putting together, because you basically only have Mike Yastrzemski on the top end to be going there. But anybody down in the basement that you're interested in going to?
So I have some exposure to Robert Stock. Now, I can't say that I'm confident in him. I have him in 13% of my lineups right now. That is 2x the field. If you need a punt pitching, I think he is the best choice. The problem with Robert Stock is that he sucks, right? So Robert Stock, he's only made one start this year, so you can't put too much stock into his one start this year. 11.25 ERA, 8.02 expected ERA, but it's 4 innings. So then you start to look at some of his other data. It's like, all right, what did he do in the minor leagues this year? Well, in 19 innings with the Cubs in AAA, he has a 4.12 ERA and a 4.2 FIP. In AAA with the Mets, he's made 2 starts, 4.15 ERA, 6.11 FIP. Then you go back to 2020, the last time he was in big leagues, 4.73 ERA. So, he has a long track record of not being good. It's a 4,700 price tag. So more than anything, I'm just kind of hoping that he lucks into, 12, 13 fantasy points. And then if one of the expensive offenses goes off, that's really the way that he ends in the optimal lineup, is if a lot of the high-end pitchers are just kind of mediocre, and then you get an okay game from Robert Stock, and then the expensive hitters go off. That's really the situation where I think he ends up being optimal. Like, I don't see a 20, 25 fantasy point game in Robert Stock's, upside. It's more just he's 4,700 as a starting pitcher.
Is there anybody that you'd be taking a shot? David Price, I know this sounds disgusting, but considering he's getting stretched into the long reliever role here, he got up to 48 pitches. Maybe if he gets to 60 or so, there's at least enough strikeout upside. I like getting to the Marlins a little bit more with righties as opposed to lefties, but I guess it doesn't really matter either way. It's not a great hitting team on either side of the plate, but that was kind of a guy that I had in play at 5,500. It's kind of a pivot to get a little bit different. We're seeing that K rate. It's spiked a little bit because he has been a reliever here of late, but is something as weird as that in play on like this $6 on DraftKings where there's 49,000 entries?
Yeah, it's in play. It's not something I'm doing a ton though. There's other pitchers that I'd rather go to. I'd rather go to Robert Stock actually than David Price. So, Price's numbers this year, they look decent. 3.58 ERA, 3.81 expected ERA. The main issue I have with David Price is just how long is he going to be allowed to, or how deep is he going to be allowed to pitch into the game? It's a great matchup against the Marlins, but 42 pitches last time out. His outings before then, 7 pitches, 2 pitches, 14 pitches. And, that also the game where he threw the extended pitch, it was only a few days ago. It was on July 4th. So I don't think it's all that likely that David Price goes out and throws even 50 to 60 pitches. So he's going to be really limited in my opinion today. So maybe I'll ask you that question then. How many pitches realistically do you think we could get out of David Price?
I think it's 65. It sounds ridiculous. Again, this was the one guy that I was kind of uncomfortable to bring up here on the show because I was getting to a little bit of him earlier in the day as well. A little bit less here now. Not even a guy that's showing up in our top pitchers tool, but that's because he's coming in the long reliever role. Not going to be a starter here at all, but. On FanDuel, you don't ever have to think about something like this, but him and Holloway sitting right next to each other. I have no interest in going to Josh Holloway just against this Dodgers offense. There's not a lot of Ks to be had, but against the Miami Marlins, you look at some of the splits that they have up against left-handed pitching. They strike out at a 27.7% clip, only an 87 WRC plus here on the season, only a 145 ISO. And I'm just looking at these 50,000 person tournaments. And if I don't like any of these mid-range options, and if Robert Stock ends up failing, his ownership's starting to rise here in a couple of spots, I wouldn't find it to be the craziest thing. I mean, I have 5% of him right now. I think that's going to be well over the field already, in my allotment of lineups. I'm thinking about increasing him a little bit more. I think there's also a chance where if he, ends up going 3 or 4 innings, he could possibly be picking up the win after the fact. And that would be worth something. Get him to around, he put up 12.7 fantasy points against Washington in 2 innings of work, 3 Ks there. I don't really know the situation for that, but I mean, David Price, 5,500, if he ends up getting to around 60 pitches, which isn't a crazy increase. I mean, he's a veteran. I could see a spot where maybe they're a little bit more timid with him. And the Dodgers in the past, underneath Dave Roberts have been very cautious with pitchers, but I just want to throw him out as a name that, like, if I'm looking underneath 6K and I'm not playing Robert Stock, I don't think you're insane if you have a share or two of David Price today.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple lineups with him, but once again, like if you're only playing a couple of lineups or even I wouldn't start considering David Price if you're playing 50 plus lineups. Anything beyond that, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. And the biggest issue I have with David Price, it's not just that the pitch count isn't there. And like you said, he could be getting more stretched out. He's only pitching on 2 days rest. So to me, I just don't think it's all that likely that somebody on 2 days rest is going to go out and throw, a massive amount of pitches. I'm just really quickly scanning for beat writers online to see if anybody's thrown out an exact pitch count from David Price. I haven't seen anything, specific. My guess though is that he pitches 2 innings.
Okay. Yeah. In that case, I mean, not going to be somebody in play. And I know it's on short rest, but I was just kind of finding any kind of value I can to be able to get different in a pitcher slot. If I'm going to be playing some more Toronto bats, if I'm going to be going to any of the chalkier stacks that exist here on this slate, just felt like something to at least explore or talk through a little bit with you. Again, we've got plenty of time leading up to here to lock. We've got a couple of weather situations that do exist on the board. We got our guy Loco in chat. He's playing a fantastic moderator per usual. Of course, there's people who think I suck at hosting, and I feel great about it because I'm having a lot of fun, and that's all that really matters to me. You can continue to, sit in YouTube chat and enjoy your little day as I get to talk about sports, which I love to do. So I'm going to just keep doing that with my buddy Greg. Let's start going over to some stacks here as well. Actually, no, before we even do that, let's just talk about the Awesemo Plus tools and content that exist here on the site. It is a phenomenal time to be getting invested. I know that NBA is kind of slowing down. We've just got the NBA finals. We'll have shows going for that through the duration of the NBA season. It's going to be an exciting series. I'm cheering for Greg and his Suns. That I know for sure at this point in time, but $29.95 for the weekly pass to check out MLB and all the goodies we have. We have so many things in the MMA product. We have fantasy football stuff that's going to be popping here very soon for best ball, for fantasy, for year-long stuff. Follow at Awesemo Fantasy, the new account that Matt Gajewski is going to be helping out, putting a ton of content out for. But you get full access to player projections, ownership projections, premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and so much more. And if you're a user of Awesemo Plus, then you can take advantage of this promo code that's going to pop up on the screen, MLB Live Before Lock. It's all caps, one word, MLB Live Before Lock, 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And of course, if you're just looking to play MLB DFS, $15.95 is the weekly package right now for that. Stop guessing, start winning, and join Awesemo Plus today. As I was saying, we're going to take a look at the top stacks, and the conversation kind of begins. I wouldn't say it ends, but it definitely begins with this Toronto team, 21.8% top stack percentage on DraftKings right now, coming in with an ownership share of 25.3%. We've seen Toronto go a little bit under-owned in a couple of these spots the last couple of slates. Definitely not the case today. How are you handling this phenomenal hitting environment against a gas can with a phenomenal offense?
Yeah, I mean, so looking, the Blue Jays, if you were to ask me just flat out, I have to bet on one team who's going to score the most runs today, the bet would be the Toronto Blue Jays. But then the question becomes, what odds are you giving me on it? And right now, the field is playing them in more than a fourth of their lineups. And that's just a little bit too high to me. So I'm underweight to the field on Toronto. It's still a team that ends up as being one of my personal most rostered stacks. But with that said, it's still nowhere near what the field is because I have exposure to the Toronto Blue Jays right now in the teens. And the field has them, 27% on FanDuel. On DraftKings right now, we have them at also 27%. So to me, when we have them with a 22% chance to be the top scoring team this slate, it's very significant. It is more than double the odds of any other team, but it's still only enough for me to get to them, like in 16% of my lineups, whereas the field is playing them way heavier. So for me, I'm going to be underweight to the Blue Jays. It's obviously a terrific spot in cash games. Load up on them. It's just the ownership's a little bit too high for me right now.
Yeah, I'm playing them quite a bit in like 5-2-1, 5-3s on DraftKings on the 3 end and the 2 end of that, just because I think Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a bat that I'm always trying to get to. I think this is probably the first time we've seen in a long time where that ownership is a little bit higher on him, 24%. He's been going, I wouldn't say under-owned, but he's the best hitter in baseball. He's 5,900 on the top end. It's a slate where a lot of people are going to try to punt with that SP2, and there's going to be ways to fit him in, but a lot of people are going to be stacking this as 5-mans. And I thought Adam brought up a lot of compelling points on the deeper dive and then on the strategy show this morning for the little bit that I caught here this afternoon. But I think that there are definitely some ways to get different with your stacks. I think the expensive cost of Simeon, Bichette, Guerrero Jr., it's very difficult to make Zach Wheeler work in some of those builds. And so making them the 3-man, and there's a stack we'll talk about here next that I'm just very, very way over top of the field on because I think that relative to the other game environments, it doesn't lag as far behind as it normally does. But I think that there are enough compelling ways to get different with it without going to the back end and putting Jansen in at 2.4K, which I think a lot of people are going to do. I'm just going to kind of opt to go different places with that. Randall Grichuk, Lourdes Gurriel, not the most compelling hitters on this slate for me. And I think I'm able to get away from them a little bit more than I am getting away from the upside that exists with Bichette, Simeon, and Guerrero Jr. Do you feel that that's something that I'm right about, wrong about, or anything that I might that I should be looking at doing differently?
It's funny because my actual favorite hitter in the Blue Jays lineup is one you just said you didn't like, and that is Lourdes Gurriel. And the reason is just because of ownership. Every single other player in this lineup right now is projected for over 20% ownership. Gurriel's only projected for 10% ownership. So just with that in mind, I think that he is the easiest player in the lineup to get overweight to the field on. And Gurriel, I mean, he's obviously not as good of a hitter as those guys, but still, he has a 112 WRC plus for his career. Hasn't been quite as good this year with a 90 WRC plus, but it's such a favorable matchup against Matt Harvey that he is somebody who I think if you want to differentiate Blue Jay stacks, he's the only way to do it. Every other player on this lineup is super popular. I mean, we have Bichette, 23% ownership, Springer, 30%, Semien, 30%, Vlad, 29%, even though he's really expensive. Gurriel is the only one that doesn't have crazy ownership. So, I mean, to me, just based on that, he's the one that makes the most sense to differentiate in stacks. Because if you're playing all the Blue Jays guys and you're playing Zach Wheeler also, you know, cool. There's definitely significant upside there, but not upside relative to the field because you're just competing with, I don't know, like out of the 60,000 lineups that are going to be in the $6 today, that's probably going to be like, I don't know, 15, 20% of them. So it's so many people you're competing with. I think the only way you could differentiate Blue Jay stacks really is by playing Gurriel.
Good call. Yeah, I think that's you. There's a couple of times that you've talked about these back end players. It seems like it's outfielders in like the 7, 8, 9 hole where you're kind of overweight to them in some of the more popular stacks. I think I can't remember what day it was recently that you also kind of invoked that strategy. I think that it's definitely a good one. But let's get to the stack that I just think that I don't know. It's going to kind of make or break my night completely, and it's going to be one San Francisco Giants going up against Johan Oviedo in San Francisco. So generally my biggest concern with playing anybody in in Oracle, in San Francisco, in the Bay there, is just the hitting conditions relative to the entire slate during the summer. I mean, it's 57 degrees there today. I mean, 100% humidity is neat. Winds blowing out 12 miles per hour to center. I mean, that's not really the thing, but the temperature, 57 degrees is very cool. But if you look at these game environments outside of the Toronto and Baltimore game, I mean, it's 82 with 80% humidity, but you know, Brett Anderson, Robert Stock, not my favorite spot to be going there in a 7-inning game to try to stack up anything there. The roof's closed in Miami for the Dodgers game. You've got wind blowing in at Wrigley. You've got the roof closed in Houston. You've got the roof closed in Arizona. You've got 69 degrees in San Diego with no wind. And you've got 70 degrees in Seattle. So like relative to the entire weather environment everywhere else on the slate, San Francisco does not fall as far behind. We're seeing a run total that's pushing 5 for the San Francisco Giants here in this spot. That should give, I mean, for me, it just sets off alarm bells. And then seeing the fact that they are going under-owned over on DraftKings today, 6.4% top stack potential. This feels like an easy play for me. I'm not even sure if I want, I saw the lineup just came out here. Okay, it does not. It has Kurt Casale. It does not have Buster Posey. That's going to be easy for me to pair two more expensive pitchers. I think I'm going to be going to San Francisco a lot tonight. How do you feel about them?
Yeah. So by chance, did you watch the strategy show I did with Adam this morning?
I did not. I saw like 10 minutes of it.
Okay. Well, the Giants are my most rostered stack today. So I have no issue with it whatsoever. Whatsoever. I'm actually just updating my lineups now because, like you said, the Giants lineup just came out. And just given that there are some players missing from it, it's going to mean I just have to rerun my lineups because we don't have, Buster Posey isn't in the lineup. Wilmer Flores is in the lineup hitting third. So here's the lineup. Might as well just read it off. It is Lamont Wade, Mike Yastrzemski, Flores, Dickerson, Crawford, Vossler, Duger, and Casali. So, it is a pretty cost-effective offense. The only expensive players in there are Brandon Crawford and Mike Yastrzemski. Which is something you mentioned. Right now, Lamont Wade Jr. batting leadoff for the Giants. He is my most rostered individual hitter, only projected for 10% ownership at a cheap price. I really like this spot for the Giants. They're a really underrated offense for the course of the season, and definitely an offense that I've underrated for a lot of the year. And then something else to mention here is that EMAC 2024. He's in the chat right now. So I did a bunch of baseball shows with EMAC last year, and this is something that he was really early to. So last year, the Giants moved in their fences and it became more of a hitter-friendly park. Now, EMAC, being a little facetious, he was calling it Coors Field 2.0 after they moved the fences in. But, I still think there's a lot of people that just look at the Giants when they're playing at home and they say like, hey, Pitchers Park, I don't really want to roster them here. But, fairly often, I think they've gone under-owned relative to their upside. And yeah, this is the team that I currently have the most exposure to. I think it's a really good spot. And I totally agree with you if they're going under-owned.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. And Kirk Casali, not my favorite hitter on planet Earth, but I think 3K at catcher, you could do worse in a couple of these spots. I think it takes the overall stack, makes it a little bit cheaper as well. I really like going to this spot, and I think it just kind of sticks out as a glaring misprice for just about everybody else here in this matchup. And just relative to the other offenses on this slate, it does not lag behind like it normally would. Is there another stack that's really kind of sticking out to you? We're seeing a lot of ownership that was going to Colorado earlier. Now there's a little bit of positive leverage, but I can't get myself to be playing Colorado in this spot. I think I'd be much more inclined to try to overpay for some Yankees, combine some Wheeler and Stock stacks together and go that direction. What are you doing in your next couple stacks? What are your next most owned stacks?
Let's see. So, like I said, I still have a lot of Toronto, just relative to the field. I don't have much Toronto, and I'm still rerunning my lineups right now just because of the Giants lineup coming on, some players in there that I wasn't expecting. But so I'm rerunning this. I'm going to ask you, what are you doing with the Colorado Rockies today? Just because they project out really well in our top stacks tool, and while that is something I generally rely on, and we have them right now with the. Let's see, what is it? The third best chance of being the top scoring team on the slate. I rarely roster the Colorado Rockies when they're on the road, especially when, they're somewhat popular, 6.4% projected ownership. It has been over the last 5 years, the worst WRC plus on the road in baseball, the worst WRC plus against right-handed pitching. I just generally don't like the Rockies, but I'm just a little conflicted because of what our tools say. So what did you do with Colorado?
I'm underweight on every batter except for one, and that's Ryan McMahon. He's the only guy that I think has any kind of power potential. 48.6% hard hit percentage on the season, 92 average exit velocity. He strikes out a lot here, 26.7%. But this Arizona team and this bullpen and starting off with Humberto Castellanos, I just don't see Ryan McMahon. I hate that he's in the 6 hole today. They've pushed him back in the order to the 6-7 hole of late. Hasn't been as effective, but I think from a raw talent perspective, I'm willing to overpay just to get a little bit different. I don't think he'll be as owned compared to some of the rest of the hitters in that lineup that are hitting a little bit higher in the order. I think he's the best hitter out of the group and has the most potential to probably have a ceiling game in some kind of spot here. Not to really talk about it relative to the NBA, but as a one-off, I'm getting to him here in some spots. But otherwise, I really don't have an interest in going to this team as a stack. They are just a horrendous team. And, you can look at their splits on either side of it, but on the season, this is a bad team. I believe it was a 73 WRC plus that they had against right-handed pitching. I don't know how long Castellanos is going to go for, but it's going to be mostly righties out at that pen. I don't really like Colorado today. I think that they're probably, even at where they are, a little bit overowned. And I know I just want to trust the top stack tool and go overweight to them. And I know that there's some value to be had there, but I can't do it today.
Yeah. And it's like I said, I'm going to bring up right now just the overall WRC plus numbers. for the year. The other thing also is keep in mind that, the Diamondbacks really don't have a particularly great bullpen at all. And I know people bringing up, they're like, hey, if the Rockies are going to go off in any spot on the road, it's going to be against the Diamondbacks bullpen. I saw somebody bring that up before. I don't know who to credit with that brought it up before, but still in general, bullpen games, they're going to be better than just going up against a mediocre starting pitcher. Like if you look at Humberto Castellanos' numbers this year, they're not going to blow you away, but it's better than the majority of starting pitchers. And, the Colorado Rockies this year, here are their numbers against right-handed pitching. So the Rockies have a 72 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year. That is the worst in baseball by a fairly substantial margin. The second worst is the Arizona Diamondbacks on the other side of the game at an 80 WRC plus. So then pulling up Humberto Castellanos' numbers, once again, it's not like he's some lights out reliever. However, he's a 3.09 ERA, a 3.25 expected ERA. So that's still, that's a fairly tough matchup for 1 to 2 innings. Then there's going to be other guys that come in that are still going to be, above the quality of a back end starter. So I don't think this is a terrific spot for the Rockies. And I'm just a little curious as to why the run total is so high.
Me too. It's a terrible baseball team. They are awful. And they obviously play in a horrendously difficult division as well. So maybe that's part of it too, where, you play most of your games against the Giants, the Dodgers. And obviously these two teams facing off in the basement of the NL West is definitely a plus, but yeah, Giants, Dodgers, and Padres, not an ideal spot to be a team that's a little bit substandard as a lineup as is. And they haven't really been that effective. I haven't even been rostering them that much at Coors Field this year. It's just such a bad lineup, but I digress. We're going to keep it moving along. Also, Justin Bruce, ask Mr. Baker if he wants to chop our winnings in the $88 contest. I'm playing one lineup and he's maxing it, I assume. I assume that he's doing that too, but best of luck to you. Thank you for the super chat. You can do it. Just put your back into it. Let's see. Going across, no other questions here at the moment. Let's keep going down with stacks here. Is there anybody super on the low end that you might be interested that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, there is. I think we had some questions in the premium Slack chat that we could answer. One from Ken Simmons, who I answered in the Slack chat. We could talk about it here because he said, "Is it okay in the 25 max?" I assume he means 20, and that was a typo. But is it okay in the 25 max entry GPP to get 40% Wheeler, 40% San Francisco, and 40% Toronto? So for me personally, I'm rarely ever rostering a team in 40% of my stacks. But with that said, if you're playing 20 lineups, you don't want to spread a net that's too wide. I'm fine with going really overweight to San Francisco. I would be higher than 40% on Wheeler. I mean, as is, even in 150 lineups, I have Zach Wheeler in the majority of my lineup. So I think over 40% Wheeler is warranted. I don't feel comfortable getting to 40% Toronto, just given how high their ownership is. But San Francisco is your most owned stack. I have no issue. That's something I like doing as well.
Yeah, I did say you can do it. Put your back into it. You're welcome, everybody. It is a thing that came out. Again, I know this isn't the tip off, but when Greg and I get together, we go back to our roots, and that's just kind of what it is. I like that call quite a bit, but I'm looking down here a little bit further. Oakland is a team that I was thinking I was going to get to a little bit more than what I ended up to. He's been a very good pitcher, Luis Garcia, and as the whole, I'm not rostering a bunch of him. Part of that is just a product of Zach Wheeler existing on this slate, but Luis Garcia, 213 expected batting average is elite, 376 expected slugging, also elite, 27.4% K percentage. But I think we were talking a little bit earlier today as well, where you have guys like Matt Olson that exist in this lineup. You have guys like Ramon Laureano who can hit the ball hard. You've got Jed Lowry also hitting for a little bit of power here. I think that there's some interesting ways to get some one-offs on that team at super, super low ownership, specifically one Matt Olson. What do you think about that?
Let's see. Who is my most rostered player from the A's? I don't have very much ownership here. The only guy who I have in, even what I'd consider a substantial amount of lineups is Elvis Andrus, just because favorable lineup spot. He's also almost min price on DraftKings. Mm-hmm. He's hit the ball really well as of late, double-digit fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. So to me, he's actually the individual player that makes the most sense. But targeting Luis Garcia, not something I really want to do a ton of today. So the Oakland A's, we only have them with a 3.6% chance of being the top scoring team on FanDuel today. On DraftKings, we have a 4% chance of being the top scoring team. So still fairly low odds, not a team that I'm really prioritizing. But yeah, Andrus is a one-off. I think he's a good source of value on DK.
All righty. Well, before we get ourselves over to some one-offs, into some dog picks, the good kind of dog picks, not the dog. Why am I saying dog as opposed to dong? Maybe I am a bad host. Who knows? But here I am going to do my ad read for one Jock Market, not even an ad read, because I really do enjoy playing over on that site. It is a fantastic place to go try your hand at a couple of stock exchange like games. I mean, they've basically taken fantasy sports. They've turned it into a place where you're able to buy and sell shares of players in real time during games, such as the NBA Finals, such as the NHL during the Stanley Cup, during the MLB slate. Every second of every minute, or every minute and every second, you are able to go and play NBA, MLB, NHL, and PGA to make real money every hour, every minute, every second. That's what I was going for. Use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold during the game based on your analysis. If somebody gets hurt, maybe try to unload those shares right away. If you see somebody who ends up coming into pinch hit, somebody that's out of the lineup like Buster Posey today, who's $1, bases are loaded, maybe a spot to be going in and investing there too. So download the app and get started today using the exclusive Awesemo promo code Awesemo. Just put in Awesemo at checkout for $50 bonus on your first deposit. And that is an exclusive offer for the Awesemo community. So make sure you take advantage of that today. That's Awesemo for a $50 bonus. So thank you so much to them for sponsoring the Live Before Lock show here today. We're going to kind of move ourselves along. Should we put a qualifier for dong picks today that it can't be a Toronto Blue Jay? I think that that's probably the right thing to do.
Hey, listen, I mean, you're the host. You already set the rules. What am I going to disagree with you now? I'll be like, okay, Vlad, right? Like,
Order.
I'm not gonna chicken out of this, but yeah, we'll do somebody who isn't from Toronto.
Okay, that's fair. I'm going to be going. Oh man, so Anthony Santander is not in the lineup. That was going to be my super sneaky one from earlier today. Going to probably be going somewhere else. I'm just going to say my lips to God's ears. Brandon Crawford, a guy that I have been very, very wrong about this season. I've refused to play him multiple times because I just don't believe that what he's doing is real, but he leads the San Francisco Giants, 48.4% hard hit percentage, 573 expected slugging. That is just a stupid number in this spot. I think he's going to go yard against Oviedo here in this spot. How about you?
Let's see. Also, I'm going to pull up the MLB player props tool that we have over at Awesemo.com and just see right now who is the best bet according to our top props tool. And it's right now Carlos Correa at plus 550 going up against Sean Manaea. He has, we're expecting a 20% chance at a home run. So that's 33% expected ROI. So in terms of a bet, Carlos Correa would be the guy there. Based on my ownership, I'm going to say the guy who I wanted a home run. I mean, I would appreciate if it was Lamont Wade Jr., but realistically, probably not the best of home run picks. But same team. How about Alex Dickerson?
Okay.
Alex Dickerson also, we've seen some power upside from. Once had a 3 home run game at Coors Field. Obviously, this isn't Coors Field, but as EMAC has said, we've got San Francisco Coors Field 2.0 with the fences moved in. But Alex Dickerson, he's also a hitter that I have a lot of exposure to, so I would like him to homer. He has homered in 2 of his last 3 starts. By the way, also just bringing this up. So the game that Alex Dickerson had 3 homers at Coors Field, he had an at bat. I think it was in the 8th inning with nobody on base with a chance at a 4th home run, and they walked him on 4 pitches.
Oh.
So that should be illegal. At the very least, you should be forced to throw a fastball down the middle and see what happens. But yeah, Alex Dickerson, a guy who we've seen some power upside from in the past. He's somebody else who I'm pretty overweight too.
Yeah, love that. Love that call. Super savings over on DraftKings today, too. Also on FanDuel, definitely a guy that I will be playing all over the board, smattering in a number of places. Steven Duggar as well. Don't sleep on him there. Down in the 7 hole here today. Wouldn't mind if it were him either. Let's see. I'm trying to find another guy that's a little bit off the beaten path that can kind of be a nice one-off for people in this spot. Let's go with Justin Turner against Miami. I know the Dodgers are popping up quite a bit. We haven't even talked about them necessarily on this slate, but the Dodgers 9.9% chance of being the top stack on DraftKings here today. I think that that's definitely about appropriate for them. A lot of leverage to be had. I believe they are the most leveraged team, but they are just so expensive. And you have to compare them to the opportunity cost of not playing Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, you're definitely getting reduced ownership here on them. What are you going to be doing with the Dodgers? And then also, yeah, Justin Turner, my one-off call.
Listen, I think I'm going to be putting my ass into it. So the Los Angeles, I'm overweight to the Dodgers. I think they make for a really good pivot off of the Toronto Blue Jays. If you just look at some of the ownership we have on the slate today, at least in terms of a high end offense, for sure, the Raptors, the Blue Jays have a better chance of scoring the most runs on the slate than the Dodgers. But compared to the ownership here, where we have right now top stacks with 22% chance for Toronto to be the top scoring team, 10% chance for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, about 2x chance that the Blue Jays are the top scoring team compared to the Dodgers. However, the Blue Jays have more than 5x the ownership of the Dodgers. So just with that information in mind, I think the Dodgers make a lot of sense. The team to be overweight to the field on. So the Dodgers are a team I have a substantial amount of exposure to. And same with the San Francisco Giants. I think those are teams who, that makes for very good pivots off of the Blue Jays.
Love it. All righty. Well, that's another team that I think that you got to be invested in. Getting positive leverage on such a good offense. Again, there's no great hitting environments today outside of that one spot, and everybody's already rostering it. So I'm going to try to play the field, figure out other places to go. Very heavy on Dodgers, very heavy on the Giants. Go the NL West. How about that? Anything else that you kind of want to touch on here before we turn it over for some questions? Is there something that's kind of like sticking out to you? I'm tracking some weather here as well. I'm not a weatherman. We've got Loco there in the chat. And I will say, make sure you are following him at newsgod_DFS. That's newsgod with a Z. He has the MLB, the Awesemo MLB account on Twitter. Stay up to date with all the latest news. He will be delivering starting lineup confirmations, injury updates, late scratches, well before locks. So make sure that you're following it. Have your notifications turned on your phone. And again, may the gods be with us, because yesterday, oh, good Lord, it got really, really hairy with everything. Did you end up playing yesterday at all?
No, I had a colonoscopy yesterday. So I was under anesthesia and then came back and just slept. Now, with that said, so the last I have Crohn's and colitis. I'm supposed to get a colonoscopy every year. I didn't last year because of COVID, but the last time I got a colonoscopy, I made a lineup in the morning and just totally forgot about it. I just played one lineup on FanDuel and I hit the nuts on everything that day. And I didn't even check to see if my players were playing or anything like that. It was Engel on the White Sox. I think he scored like 40 fantasy points that day at sub 1% ownership. So there was a part in my mind that was like, maybe I should do the same thing again. But the reason I actually didn't was because I looked at the weather and there's a lot of iffy weather. And I was like, I'm not going to build a lineup having no clue which games they're playing. So I don't know how it would have gone, but I will say that, I live not that far from New York City, and it absolutely poured the entire day. So to me, like, I saw that everybody was really high on DeGrom after the fact and got really upset about that game being rained out on Twitter. But, with that said, I mean, I don't know what the weather report was exactly like, but it poured the entire day here.
Oh, the weather report was a disaster. I mean, of anything, you had Steve, whatever his name is, the owner of the Mets here now, the multi-billionaire, whatever his face is, tweeting out that they were for sure going to be playing that game. And, oh, we're going to get this game in. And then, oh, well, the weather was bad. Well, that's kind of crappy then to tweet out that you're going to play no matter what at that point. But I didn't really notice that until well after the fact. It didn't affect anything that I was doing. I put a couple of them together late. I know that there was some confidence here and there that maybe they would just wait and then that game would get in. Didn't happen, but such is life. And you just hope to be on the right side of it more than you hope not to be, and try to make the best decisions you can. And News God will always put in all the work for you and be giving you the best information to his knowledge to that point. So no hard feelings about anything there. That's just part of what MLB DFS is about. It is a fickle thing to get right. So just hopefully we don't have that snake bite today with Zach Wheeler, because I am all in there. Looks like it's kind of cleared up there a little bit. 90% humidity isn't ideal. Wind still blowing in from left. Looks great. 72 degrees. It's saying light rain here at this point in time. Do you see anything different with any of the weather here? Because I think we're in the clear now on this slate.
Yeah, so I mean, the key to the weather here is actually not even the rain at this point, because it's not looking like there's a significant chance of rain. The key here is that the wind is blowing in, and it's really favorable conditions for the pitchers. And then I didn't roster any stacks of the offense in either part of this game, but that's really the key takeaway from the weather here. Is I know a lot of people are asking like, oh, is it going to rain? Is it going to rain? That's to me not what's important. What's important is that the wind is blowing in at Wrigley.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a completely different environment we've seen the last 2 days. I think it was 41 total runs that were scored between the two teams the last 2 days. That's pretty dumb. So now you're going to see the exact opposite. And I'm just hoping that Wheeler mows him down. And I know you did a good job of bringing this up earlier, but I want to go back to the MLB player props tool as well. A guy that we had been talking about quite a bit today, Zach Wheeler. Another positive place to go over to go take advantage of this number, 7.5 strikeouts, is going to Odd Shopper. Going to the props tool, you just click on the link that's right next to it. We have him as a 17% expected ROI. It was a little bit higher earlier in the day. I think part of that is, maybe it cleared up, maybe the humidity went up. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I know he was around the 30% expected ROI number earlier in the day. The over on 7.5 still looking like an advantageous spot to be going there. Sean Manaea and Domingo Germán taking the unders on both of their props. Another fantastic spot to be going to. Definitely be taking advantage of that MLB prop tool strikeouts. I believe it is still free right now. We are in the free trial process of that tool. You want to be checking that out. We got a question in the premium Slack from Jets World. He always does a good job of throwing in some questions. He goes, best third baseman one-off, not named Biggio on DK for the 3180 on DK tonight. Oh, baby. A lot of pressure. We need a third base one-off, not named Biggio.
Wilmer Flores. I mean, that's the one he's the third baseman I have the most exposure to. So, I mean, if you go through all of my exposures position by position, it's going to be a San Francisco Giant at this point at almost every single spot. But yeah, it is Wilmer Flores for me. He's my most exposed third baseman.
All right. I love that call as well. Obviously, I do. Wilmer Flores. That whole lineup. Jason Vossler. Do you know anything about Jason Vossler? I've never even heard of him before.
I don't know him personally. I don't know if that's what the
we got to get him on the phone here. We need to get him on live before lock. He's playing third base here tonight, so I was just curious because I think he's the actual third baseman. Are they moving Flores over to second or something today? Or it's kind of interesting.
All right, so Vossler's numbers pulling up right now. I mean, also you can't go wrong with somebody who's min price. Is he actually good? Probably not. He has a 98 WRC plus this year. He's had 60 plate appearances. If you look at his minor league numbers, they are okay. He's hitting an above average rate in the minor leagues, but keep in mind also, he's somebody who's 27 years old that's been toiling in AAA and AA for the last 7 years now. So no, he's in all likelihood a replacement level player, but he's min price in a favorable hitting environment. So, with that in mind, he's worth having the player pool. But I mean, it's not like, let's see, how much exposure do I have to Vossler right now? He is in 8% of my lineups. Okay. So, I mean, how much of Jason Vossler are you getting?
My last run, I was getting an inconscionable amount at third base, and I need to cap him at this point in time. I probably entered too many contests today is what I'm starting to learn, especially because I've got this. We're going to have PGA live before lock coming on right after this. If you hate me as a host, you're going to really hate me as an analyst because I love to talk about baseball and I love to talk about golf even more. We got the John Deere Classic, not the greatest golf tournament on planet Earth, and that is putting it lightly. It is a dog shit field. I'm just going to throw that out there, but it is going to be so much fun because the money still spends the same. There's still a $15 with $200K to first over on DK. You're going to want to check that out. Ben Ross and me coming up after MLB live before lock. Any other questions that we have coming up here at the moment? Greg about to throw that thing back. Yeah, no, we're not going to have Greg do that here at this point in time. He's a little tender probably still at this point in time, which isn't something I want to think about.
You don't know the half. And also, I was telling Tyler this morning, but also the nurse messed up my IV. So I'm technically, they told me not to work today. So the nurse, she just stuck the IV in my arm and not even in a vein. So when they went to put the anesthesia in me to put me to sleep, I number one, I didn't fall asleep. So the anesthesiologist is like, okay, count to 3 and then you'll be asleep. And I'm like, all right, 1, 2, 3, count in my head. And I'm like, I'm not asleep, but my arm feels like it's on fire right now. And then I look down and there's my arm, there's like a baseball coming out of it. And what happened is the nurse, she just missed the vein and just stuck the IV in my arm. So there was just anesthesia shooting into my arm, not going to my bloodstream or anything like that. So yeah, like my arm is really weird. Like it's all numb today and it's really weird feeling, but yeah, that was no fun. The other thing that's funny too is so when you go in, they attach the heartbeat monitor to you. So, it's just going to have like beep, 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 beep. And I look down and I see my arm starting to swell up and it feels like it's on fire. And all of a sudden my heart rate starts going a lot higher. So it's like beep, 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 beep. And it was going like very, very fast. And yeah, listen.
Wow.
Listen, the colonoscopy, it's not the most fun activity.
Should we just end the stream now? I don't really.
Oh, we got baseball to talk about.
That's how Shane Bieber lives his day-to-day life. He just has an inflamed arm and walks around and does whatever else. Is he going to be back this season? Is he at all? I don't even know.
I don't think so. But anyway, yeah, I mean, listen, that's I wouldn't go to the surgery center in Hillsborough, New Jersey. I wouldn't recommend it.
That's a great idea. All right. Albert Pujols, I'm getting way too much of. That is the guy. Why is he in the 2-hole tonight? I don't even know. But on FanDuel, he is popping up in just about everything that I'm doing. It is really, really a little bit overboard here at 2,200. I think it makes sense if you're trying to play Zach Wheeler and Dodgers. I think that makes a little bit of sense going that direction. Are you getting to any Albert Pujols here at the moment?
I have 9% of Albert Pujols. And the reason I have 9% of Albert Pujols is not because I believe in him whatsoever as a player. He's been so washed for so long now. And I think, when's the last time that Albert Pujols had an above replacement year season? It has been a significant amount of time. So Albert Pujols, yeah, so about negative half a win this year. The last time Albert Pujols was an above replacement level player was 2016. He was only worth 0.8 of a win that year. The last year that he actually qualified to be an average starter was 2012, when he was worth 3.3 wins. His first year with the Angels when he signed a big contract. So it's like 10 years since Albert Pujols has been any good. But with that said, he's cheap. I'm stacking the Dodgers today. He works in stacks. So I think it makes sense to use him as a one-off, but I think it would be a mistake to go like crazy heavy with him.
Somebody said, I'd find a new place for your story from before. I agree with that. I would find a new damn hospital. That is for sure. Any other questions we have in premium Slack? Doesn't look like we have anything.
Listen, we've got a super chat here from Sean Michael Pujols equals 2-hole. With, by the way, if
just came in, okay.
But listen, if Albert Pujols, if Pujols is going to go yard just because of my colonoscopy, right? Maybe there's a little bit of symmetry there. Maybe if we're playing the narrative game, if you
think tonight, are you going to get a colonoscopy like once a month?
No, because I have to get them done once a year anyway. Except the prep is the least fun thing ever.
I don't even want to know. I'll find out in 7-10 years. I'm not sure. I'm 33. We'll figure out when that'll be. 17
years.
Okay. Yeah. Blitz just said I'm super late. Don't go back and listen. There's really nothing that you're missing here at this point in time. Good to see you, ma'am. This is an error I can get behind. I see what you did there. There's some nice correlation with these jokes. I'm enjoying it very, very much. Anything that's really changed here in this top stacks? We're not really that worried about weather here at this point in time. That makes me very happy because that's literally what I think 90% of the show was yesterday, was trying to figure out what was going on with that Mets game. Let's take a look here. Nothing's really changed crazy. 50% Zach Wheeler over on DK. I still think 21% for Luis Garcia as a top pitcher here on this slate. That's still pretty crazy to me. 9,600. I guess that definitely, I think it's more accessible to be playing Wheeler and Garcia now that you don't have to pay up for Posey in that San Francisco lineup, but I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get to that. How much Luis Garcia are you getting to today?
Let's see. So I'm uploading the final version of my lineups, and then I could go check that out. I'm off the top of my head, I'm about even with the field. Yeah, I'm almost exactly even with the field on Luis Garcia. And then I'll pull up my Giant stacks, who are my most rostered pitchers in those stacks. So actually in my Giant stacks, I'm getting to a lot of Zach Wheeler and Luis Garcia just because of price, right? We have the Giants are so cheap now without, like you said, Buster Posey in there, that it's not problematic to pay up for pitching. So my most rostered pitchers in Giant stacks are Zach Wheeler and Luis Garcia.
All right. Well, I was selfishly trying to fix my lineups here. We got 12 minutes here coming up before lock. We're going to take you guys all the way up to it. We are just rolling along. Nothing too interesting is happening right now. Again, just double checking weather. People asking about the game in Chicago. Looks a lot better to me than it did earlier in the day. I can tell you that much. I'm not too worried about it at all at this point in time. I think it would be pretty catastrophic to have something happened to get Wheeler out of this game that would be weather based. So take that for what you will. I'm feeling pretty darn confident about it. I'm going to be rolling with a ton of Wheeler. So is Greg. It's just kind of a default thing that you have to do on this slate. And I mean, I feel really, really good about him against this Cubs lineup, but let's go back through a couple of these. What were your highest owned hitters then on this slate? Is it pretty much all going to be San Francisco Giants? Is there like a one-off that's really kind of showing up for you? Kind of like Elvis Andrus you were talking about earlier.
Not really. I mean, there isn't there. I mean, I have some exposure to like JT Realmuto as a one-off just because he's cheap. He's a catcher with some upside. And even though I hate the hitting environment for that game, and I have no stacks of either side of the game, JT Realmuto at 3,400. It's very rare that we get him at that kind of a cheap price. So, he's sensible, but he's also popular. But no, there's not really any one-off that I have a whole bunch of exposure to, if I'm being honest.
Somebody just asked, would you play Milwaukee and New York Mets pitchers? I think we're both going to be playing some stock. We're going to take some stock in stock, which is, probably the most apt name we could possibly have on a show sponsored by Jock Market.
I have him in some lineups, but it's not a priority play for me. It's just in a spot. Like if you're paying up for a lot of hitting and you're rostering Zach Wheeler and you need to go cheap, I prefer stock to the other cheap options on the slate. So I think stock is a better option than David Price. I think he's a better option than Castellanos, Harvey, Detweiler, Jake Reed, all those guys. I'd rather play Robert Stock than those guys. So with that in mind, it makes sense to have him like 5 to 10% of lineups, but not as like a high priority play. But if you need to go cheap at pitcher, that's where I think he makes sense.
So CL Lara said, "You're the best, Greg. Best of luck with your health, my friend." I think we all can second that for sure. Definitely some interesting stuff there. And again, not to make fun of it, I'm glad you were able to share that story with us. Pretty funny, pretty good laughs on a Wednesday afternoon. I'm glad that it seems like everything's going pretty well for you. I know you have a pretty crazy diet and such, but again, we're just happy to have you here on Live Before Lock. And it's not like you can go anywhere. You're supposed to be sitting still. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? Like, they even said to me, like, they said like I should take the rest of the week off work. It's like, do you know what I do for a job? Like, I'm gonna be sitting at my computer talking about baseball. This isn't some crazy stressful thing. Like, the craziest thing that happens is I get some dickheads that pop up in the YouTube chat and they get mad at me for not liking their favorite player or whatever. But that's nothing. This isn't anything that's going to prevent me from being able to work. We do have some questions in the premium Slack chat. Swanson79 said thoughts on Yankees stack on DK. I didn't really like the Yankees that much this morning. However, Adam Scherer talked me into them a little bit just because they're so low owned, with the Yankees only project for 2% ownership. So I'm about double the field on the Yankees just because, we have some power in the offense and there are a lot of guys that hit left-handed pitching really well. So with that said, I think they make a little bit of sense as a contrarian play, but not something that's a really high priority for me.
So thoughts on Yankee stacks on DK as well?
Yeah, that was the question I just answered.
There you go. Okay, that's great. I was adjusting my stuff. I'm selfish.
We do have another question from Jets World. He asked, Herman or Woody on DK worried about the weather in San Francisco. Why would we be worried about the weather in San Francisco?
I think he just means maybe the temperature of it or something, or the fact that the wind's blowing out 12 miles an hour. The stadium is built to mitigate some of the weather conditions because it's right there on the bay. It stops it because normally the wind would be blowing in that spot and it doesn't affect it nearly as much. The main reason I know a lot of that stuff, and I'm sure it's changed over the years, was back when Barry Bonds was hitting a zillion home runs there. It was always a conversation piece like, is the wind blowing out here or that? And nobody else was hitting home runs there, but he sure was. So that was nifty. Going across everywhere else. Yeah. So Tucker or Brantley? I have Altuve and Toro already. So do you have a preference between Tucker or Brantley? Because I really like getting to both as one-offs.
Let's see, Tucker or Brantley. Who do I have more exposure to? I do not have very much exposure to either of them, but I have two more lineups with Michael Brantley than I do with Kyle Tucker. So Michael Brantley.
All right. Pretty darn close then. Somebody just said that the Toronto Blue Jays are now positively leveraged. That would be very, very interesting to me. Let me refresh it. Sure enough, down to 19.6% ownership share. We have 22% top stack number here at the moment for the Blue Jays. Does that change anything for you here as we're 7 minutes before lock?
No, I still tend to think they're going to be super popular.
I do too. I just kind of get the feeling that it's by far the best hitting environment. It's by far the highest total at 6.5 runs. I really don't see any way around it. I think that they're going to be super popular. I think they should be super popular relative to the other options we have. I'm just hoping that they don't completely burn me and that some other team, because they can go for 7 runs and outperform their team total. I'm just hoping somebody else goes for 10. And I'm going to kind of be playing the field there. And I think that that's long-term going to be the strategy for baseball that you want to employ. As much as I love my chalk and yum, I do love chalk. I am definitely going to be getting off of the chalk in this spot. That's for sure. Outside of Vlad Guerrero Jr., who I just have FOMO about.
Yeah, I mean, so I still have, like I said, I have ownership to the Toronto Blue Jays right now. 17% of my lineups are Blue Jays stack. So, it's a chunk of them. They're in there. It's still just less than the field. And if you're playing single entry, particularly for single entry, I think that ownership is going to be even higher. I think a lot of those guys are going to be, 30 to 40% owned in single entry tournaments. So, yeah, I still think that the Blue Jays are just going to be far and away the most popular team on the slate. And this is a late ownership update, and maybe I'll be wrong, but I still tend to think those guys are going to be just mega popular.
I am in your court. We got Butthole Jenkins, our favorite friend in the chat. Cut the crap. 2 favorite dong picks. I went with Turner and Crawford. Remind Butthole of who you played.
My home run pick.
Dickerson.
I think it was Dickerson.
One.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Dickerson. Another home run pick. The one that I gave out this morning. Wilmer Flores, also somebody who I like a lot to hit a home run. So, San Francisco Giants, I'm on them pretty heavily today. Also, Wilmer Flores is somebody who we think of as a better hitter against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching, but still, he's been a very good hitter against righties over the last 3 years. He's a WRC plus over 100.
Yeah, he's just a stud. And now in the 3-hole as well. He's been back in the 6-hole for whatever reason here of late. Part of that is Posey getting into the 4-hole there. So a little bit of a lineup upgrade for him as well. Man, I am just so invested in this team for sure. It is really that's going to make or break my entire day here. That's for sure. Anything else that's really sticking out to you? We got 5 minutes left. I'm refreshing some ownership. Again, weather looks pretty darn good to me. I don't think there's anything to freak out about there. Looks like the pitchers are about appropriately owned. Zach Wheeler's come down to underneath 50% ownership on DK. That would make me extremely happy. Looking over at FanDuel, he's almost about appropriately owned. So 17.4% top pitcher percentage, 20% ownership. I'm a little bit over the field on that. I have about 36% of him over on FanDuel, kind of mixing and matching some of Alex Wood, Yusei Kikuchi, some of those other guys kind of smattering around on FanDuel. Are you playing FanDuel as well today or just DraftKings?
Just DraftKings, especially for slates that are this size. I find it really hard to manage playing 150 lineups on both sites. So I only played on DraftKings today, but I did make a dummy build, and I'd still be, if I was playing lineups on FanDuel, at least per the build I have, I'd be way overweight to Wheeler on FanDuel as well.
I guess here's the last thing that we can kind of close out with. And we haven't talked about the Arizona Diamondbacks. And they're coming in as the second most popular stack over on DK. I think that's a good talking point to kind of finish out with. I am just way underneath the field on this baseball team. I understand why they're popping up in projections. I understand the value that exists there for this team. I just can't do it because I don't like rostering them. I would rather be rostering a bunch of the Yankees where there's so much upside that exists. I just think that there's good baseball teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Blue Jays. And I just don't see these offenses between Arizona and Colorado going off in this spot. Do you have a differing opinion to that?
Can you repeat that?
So Arizona coming in with the second most ownership. Do you think that is warranted? Right now, our top stack potential is only 5% for them, but they're the second most popular team on DraftKings. How much are you getting to Arizona? Do you agree with that at all, that they're a team? Because it's a team I'm just not getting to today.
So I have 0 stacks of Arizona, and it's
fantastic.
It's twofold. Number one, Antonio Senzatella is not particularly good. However, I think his numbers do get inflated a little bit just because he makes so many starts at Coors Field. And still, if you look at his outlook as a pitcher, he generates a lot of ground balls. He has a 53% ground ball rate. So not a lot of balls in the air. He doesn't give up a whole lot of home runs. And then a lot of the home runs he gives up, keep in mind, a lot of them potentially inflated because he makes a lot of starts at Coors Field. The other thing, too, is earlier we were talking about how bad the Colorado Rockies are against right-handed pitching. So the Rockies this year have the worst WRC plus in the league against right-handed pitching. The second worst WRC plus in the league against right-handed pitching is the Arizona Diamondbacks. So there's a lot of ownership going to Colorado and Arizona. I get that it's a favorable hitting environment, but for me, there's other spots I'd rather go to.
And the last question that we have here in the YouTube chat, we had somebody asking, have we talked about Yusei Kikuchi yet? I don't think we really have too much. I think he's fine. If you're trying to spike an upside with some Ks, I think on FanDuel, there's a little bit of a case to be made where you're just getting different off of Wheeler, 25.4% K percentage. But I do not like picking on this Yankees lineup whatsoever in a number of these spots against lefties. Yusei Kikuchi, a 41.5% hard hit percentage on the season. This could go very poorly for him. What are you doing with Kikuchi to finish out?
Yeah, so let's see. Our current projected ownership to Kikuchi is 13%, and I have him in 9% of my lineup. So I'm a little bit underweight to the field. And it's just another thing, too. I'm so heavy on Zach Wheeler today that it's really hard for me to get a significant amount of exposure to the other pay-up options at pitching. So Kikuchi, just because of that, doesn't really make it into a lot of my lineups. Earlier in the day, I think he was projected for like 2% ownership on DraftKings. And at that point, he looked like a little bit more favorable of an option. But now that he's projected for 13% ownership, just looks like a neutral play to me.
All righty. Well, in the next couple seconds, I'm sure we will be officially here at Lock. So we're going to close it out. We are all done on our side. Best of luck to everybody. We've got PGA Live Before Lock with me and Ben Rasa coming up after this, covering all you need to know for the John Deere Classic. Before I get out of here, Greg, any final words for the people?
No, I'd just say avoid the Hillsborough Surgery Center. Other than that, let's go Giants.
Let's go Giants. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's just kind of where we're at here today. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell as we head out of here. He's Greg. Go follow him at G Ehrenberg DFS. I am Eric Lindquist. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist. We're out of here. Good luck tonight.